All right, I'll call this meeting of the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board to order. Welcome to everybody who's here. We appreciate you being here. It's good to have a full house again for us. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Ellen Miranda, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For those of you that haven't or have been to previous board meetings, my name is Andy Frere. I'm the current vice president of the governing board. And since we are without a president, I'll be presiding until that election happens later in this meeting. So just so you know who I am and what's going on. Item 4 on the agenda, we need to approve our agenda. Can I get a motion, or are there any questions, first of all, about the agenda? Can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move that we consider approving the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Likewise, we need to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Any questions or changes to the minutes from our meeting of December 6th? Okay, hearing none, can we get a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting on December the 6th, 2022 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approval of the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of December 6, 2022, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. All right, we have two presentations today. The first is from Kelsey Secor and is our instructional minute.
Taking them long way. Sorry.
Extra steps counts as part of your minute.
It does. Good evening. I'd just like to say welcome to our brand new board members. It's nice to have you here. So each board meeting we do a short little blurb of our instructional minute just to give you an update on what's happening as far as instruction goes. This month I'm very excited to tell you that we are beginning the science curriculum adoption. So earlier this year we began the social studies piece, and we'll be bringing that to you next month to hopefully vote on. But we are beginning this week to adopt science curriculum. So it has been quite a while since we've adopted science. I believe it was 2002, 2003, the last time we adopted science curriculum. So it is time. Our teachers are excited, and they're very ready to do that. So just quick timeline for this work. Our committee will be working starting this Friday. We will work through March to select the best option for our district. Then we will place that curriculum on public review. Later in March through May, has to be on for 60 days, and then a potential school board vote by June of this year for implementation next school year. Big picture goals for curriculum adoption. These are the three that we really look at when we're adopting curriculum. And we know that materials have a high impact on student achievement and learning outcomes. So we want to find the best, highest quality materials that we can offer to our teachers. We also want to ensure that all students have an equal opportunity to those high level materials in each classroom. And it provides consistency from class to class. Give me a minute to read those. So our committee members, as with all curriculum adoption, we have a variety of members who make up our committee. So we have teachers, administration and directors within the school district. We have community members, instructional coaches, parents, and then district staff who will make up that committee. So we have a committee of 33 people who will be helping to select our next science curriculum. And last but not least, these are most of the science curriculums that we will be looking at and analyzing. So there were not a ton of options when it came to social studies curriculum, but there are a lot more options when it comes to science. So for our K-5, our elementary schools, they have 7 options to choose from. Our middle school, 6th through 8th grade, have 10 options, and our high school has 10 options as well. So that is a really good opportunity for us to select an amazing science curriculum. So I look forward to bringing you updates here in the future as far as where we're at with that work. Do you have any questions for me about science curriculum?
I do.
Go.
How do we get on the committee? I'd like to volunteer.
Great question. So the committee is recommendations from within that, within district leadership. And unfortunately, right now we have 2 board members currently, so we are not allowed to have 3. So there will be opportunities for you to be part of that, and I'm happy to kind of chat with you about that in the future.
I didn't see who they were.
Oh.
I know, Andy, you wanted to be.
Andy
And Jane.
Yes.
And
Jane.
Jane.
Yes.
Okay. And, okay, so how did you choose those particular curriculum?
So we did a lot of research. So researching anything that was out there. So there's some really great education websites. Ed Reports is one of them. And so Ed Reports. So we look through anything that's available. So these are all of the ones that are applicable that we know would work for Arizona. So we will look and see if they completely match those Arizona state standards. Diane Ryan, who's our department chair up at the high school, she also has been to a bunch of professional development opportunities through ADE, the Department of Ed, and they have vendors there a lot. So she's talking to people all the time, and we've taken that list, and that's what you see here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Kelsey, would you just highlight kind of the big shift in the science standards from 2003 when we adopted to what we're being asked to teach now?
I will do my best. I will do my best.
Complex.
It is very complex, and there's a lot to these new science standards. I look forward to bringing you some informational pieces as we get further into this adoption. But really, it's about the big picture thinking. So it's not about reciting facts. It's not all about the scientific method, but it is about going through the process of design in a lot of these cases. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Well,
I'm
I was
trying to-
just going to say, I know when we adopted the standards a while ago, the big shift was the inquiry-based
Yes.
learning, and that it's like Kelsey said, not that memorization, but
Right.
more about learning through inquiry and discovery and hands-on. And so it's important that we need a new curriculum to address those
Correct.
standards.
Yeah, our old curriculum does not address the new Arizona state standards. So teachers have been creating their own pieces, so it'll be nice to have something that's comprehensive that has all of that for them.
Can you give an example kind of what you mean by that, where our teachers have been creating their own curriculum to match the state standards? So how are they doing more of the hands-on, especially maybe in the elementary levels?
Yeah.
What are the teachers doing to get them that experience right now that hopefully the new curriculum will address?
Great question. So there are a variety of resources out there. So there's a lot of digital platforms that have created units and lessons. So there is something called the Next Generation Science Standards, which are very similar to Arizona, but Arizona does have some differences. So that is a national set of standards, similar to what Common Core was, but then Arizona took that basic idea and tweaked it and made it their own. So there is a ton of resources for the next generation science standards out there, and ADE has even adopted some of those and paid for them for free, so they have all access to those. You can search some of those engines, and I don't know them off the top of my head, but I can get those for you. You can put in the standard that you're going to be teaching, and it'll pop up a list of investigations, it'll pop up a list of activities that students can do. It also has reading in there, it has the hands-on application pieces within each unit.
So currently, our teachers are finding that on their own and implementing that in their classrooms.
Correct.
Right now. Okay.
Yep, to make sure that they're meeting those standards
Okay.
and that
Because,
expectation.
because the curriculum doesn't have those
Yeah.
resources in it. Okay.
Yeah, the
Correct.
books right now don't align with the standards, so they're searching for lessons and activities that do align to what we're supposed to teach, because that's what we want to do, is teach the
Correct.
standards.
Right. And the last time we adopted was 2003, you said? Holy smokes,
It's been a while.
20 years ago.
Yeah, and the new standards have been out since 2018.
Okay. All right,
And it
thank
helps a lot that district DAA money has come back. Prior, that's part of the freeze over all those years. Had no money to pay for it.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
Our next item is a presentation from Crystal Coons on the Teens Closet.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having me. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to tell you about Teens Closet and to thank PUSD for all that they've done for Teens Closet. But first, I'd like to congratulate the new board members and the officers and say welcome and thank you for everything that you do for this community with your free time. That's just amazing. In 2020, my family and I moved to Prescott from Phoenix, and we have a daughter who's 28 and a son who's 25, and both of them went through all of the schools, or went through the schooling, Abaya Judd, Granite Mountain, Prescott High School, and then they went on Yavapai College, NAU, and they have careers now, and they're doing great. And our daughter and her husband actually moved back to Prescott a year and a half ago, so I'm pretty excited about that. I just wanted to say that in those years that I've been in Prescott as PTA president, volunteering, teaching health education, I started noticing that there was a need in the community for teens, and so we started what's called Teens Closet. And I'm going to show you a video that will tell you all about it, and then I will answer any questions that you have.
Before we start, can we just make sure everybody speaks into their microphones? Would you pull that down a little, Crystal?
Is that better?
Thank you.
Did you
Yeah,
hear anything I said?
Yes, thank you. Just
got
for the
you.
live stream.
Teens Closet is coming up on their 10-year anniversary. We're very excited about that. In July of 2011, my daughter and I were cleaning out our closets like we did every summer, but this time we had the idea we wanted to get these clothes into the hands of people who really needed them, because they were really nice clothes. Some of them were brand new. And so we had the idea of Teens Closet. Teens Closet would not exist if it wasn't the community in Prescott. They helped us get started, and North Star Youth Partnerships Senior Program Director, Diane DeLong, approached me and she said, we would love to have Teens Closet join us as one of our programs. So we were very excited. Something as simple as clothing can help build self-confidence. We all know that. When you have an outfit on, you feel good, you feel more self-confident. It's the same thing with teens, especially with teens. When they come to Teens Closet, they're able to pick out an outfit that makes them feel good. It fosters self-confidence. It makes them feel good about themselves. And it's not just about clothing. We love Teens Closet because we want them to shape a bright future, and we're here to help them do that in whatever way that we can. One of the ways that we do that is to help them find jobs if they need jobs. We can help them build resumes, interviewing tips, all kinds of things, whatever they need. If they're going on to college, we can help them with the application, scholarships, things like that. It's really important to us that we're not just giving a hand out, but a hand up, so that they can break that cycle of poverty and they can shape a bright future.
So at one point, Crystal Coons reported to our school board about the project, and clearly everyone in the room was moved by it and wanted to help in any way that they could. So when I heard that they needed a space, and Crystal and I are friends, I said, let's go take a look around. Let's find a space that works for all of us. It's just such an important part of who we are as a community. And if you look at Teens Closet as an example of who we should be as adults and how we should be supporting students, I think it's the best example in our community of why we're here for kids.
Well, I found Teens Closet when I was beginning my cosmetology career and going to school for that. And they've been a great support for me, providing scholarships and clothing just so I can do well throughout my career. They provide essential hygienic necessities, or you can find basic items like shoes, pants, shirts, and you can even find beautiful dresses here. But most importantly, you can find people here that care about you and that want to help you succeed in life.
So any teen who's in financial need can shop at Teens Closet. They need to be 13 to 19, and most of the teens are either in foster care, Some of them are even homeless. We have private appointments, so they don't have to worry about running into somebody that they go to school with. The best way to help Teens Closet, we're not looking for used clothing donations, but gift cards, Visa cards, gift cards to Ross or TJ Maxx or Costco or Walmart. That allows us to go and shop the sales. We're very frugal. They're thinking to walk into like a thrift store where there's used clothing and it smells funny, and they walk into a beautiful boutique with brand new clothes that are trendy and teen styles, and that makes them feel good. We had a young lady come in the other day. She just got a job at Harkins, and she said, I need 2 pairs of black slacks. We had 2 pairs of black slacks in her size. So she was so excited about that, and we were excited to help her as well. So that's just one of the things that we do, and I think that's important for our community. This is our future, and we're helping these young people who are going to be adults very soon, and some of them are adults. We're helping them to break that cycle of poverty.
And thank you.
60 minutes,
And thank you to PUSD for helping us. We moved into that space at Taylor Hicks in January of 2020, and it's just been remarkable. We see approximately 25 to 30 kids a month. It's a great location, centrally located. It's fixed up so cute. We got new carpet and paint. It looks like a trendy boutique. And that young lady that was speaking, that we helped her go to cosmetology school, she gives me all the haircut coupons that I need to pass out to teens. And it's so wonderful. They give back. I have another teen. Every time she comes, she vacuums for me. They're just great. They're very grateful for what we do for them, and you're a part of that. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping me help these teens to break that cycle of poverty. I have some flyers I'll leave here. If anybody knows anyone who needs flyers, feel free to take them. And if anybody has any questions, I would like to answer them now.
I have a quickie. Do the teens have to demonstrate a financial need?
Well, if they're on free or reduced lunches, yeah,
Okay.
I've never had anybody, I mean, we've been doing this since 2011, never really felt like people were taking advantage of that. But that's kind of the benchmark that I use. Any other questions?
Hi, Ms. Coons. I have known Ms. Coons for a while now. She's educated me. She's been my teacher. She's an amazing neighbor. Oh, hi, Ms. Dillon. Sorry, I just got excited. But she's an amazing woman, and she puts so much effort into the Teen Closet. I've been a part of some organizations who have, partnered with Teens Closet to get them clothes and toiletries and things, and they do amazing work over there, and it would not be possible without this lady right here. She's amazing. So thank you, Ms. Coons.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, my honor. And also, speaking of partnering, PHS, a lot of their groups will do things like make these toiletry bags for our kids. They're doing a Jeans for Teens drive, which is about the only thing that we will take that's used, because obviously if the more ripped, the better, I guess. So we're very grateful for all of the community partners that we have, but most of all, so grateful to PUSD. They've been so good to us, and you are helping Teens Closet change lives. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Summary of current events, information-only items, summary of current events. Superintendent report.
Yeah,
Joe.
I wanted to give a quick update on our visioning committee. We're going to have a full update on this at the next meeting in February. But just want to tell you where we're at, because there's a big invite in here on January 26th, and we need your help getting the word out, because this is something that we want our community's input in from the very beginning, and our committee was quite clear on that through this process. But just a real quick rundown. They're tackling some huge topics that have been topics of this community for probably 15 or 20 years. And one is a possible future high school. We have had some land donated at Deepwell Ranch, and because of that, and also for a long-term interest in the Mile High Middle School space from different people in our communities to maybe repurpose that. The board gave us direction a couple years ago to dig deep into this. And so we have a team of architects who build high schools for a living, and they're walking us through a very neat process. The committee has met 3 times over a 3-month period. There's about 32 committee members, some real great leaders and thinkers of the Prescott community. We'll get you a list of their names probably at that major update. But some great folks on that committee. You know, and they're digging into what configuration we look like we did 7 or 8 years ago when we dug in and said, we're closing 2 schools. How are we going to set this thing up? So we're taking another look at that, if Mile High Middle School would be sold, and possibly those kids would have to be moved somewhere and a new high school built. So this whole thing includes probably a big bond at some point and a lot of board discussion and decisions. So lots and lots of discussion between now and even any type of vision for you. Sorry, I don't have a great one for you yet. And that was really the message of the committee this last week was, okay, let's get in front of the community and get them engaged right now and start to ask them what they want us to look for as a committee. And it's clear to them that ultimately that's a board decision where there will also be lots of opportunity for community input. And so in doing that, we will be having an information meeting on January 26th, and it's going to just kind of give the nuts and bolts of why we're having this conversation, a lot more than what we think we're going to do, because we're not there yet. We want to hear from the community what we think we're going to do. And a big piece to that is, do you want to sell Mile High Middle School? That's actually not even on the books yet. This school board would have to take that to the voters, and the voters would have to allow that. But we know there are lots of people interested in developing that with lots of different ideas. And so, so they're going to just kind of explain the situation and the big question that's in front of the community, or has been in front of the community for years. And then what's really neat is that committee is going to make themselves available in the very beautiful Roost Street Theater right now. Got a new paint job and new carpet and things like that. Come see it. That'll be on January 26th at 6 o'clock. And we're going to have some cookies and lemonade, and those 32 people will be available to chat with the community, and I'll be there. Several of us will be there, and that will be the first in a series of welcoming the community to come and take a look at what we're talking about and give us direction as a community. So then February 7th, it's kind of a chicken egg thing. I was like, I'd love to get in front of the board again before we go to the community, but you're going to hear from these folks a lot. They're going to come next month, kind of give you the rundown on what that committee's been looking at. It's been really neat, and we may see some examples of it on the 26th, but we're using Menti, which is up on the board, asks you questions, and you can, it's a survey. And so the people in the crowd, we can get a feel for where they're at and what they think. And so that's one way to start to get input. But this is a big, long process of getting input of what should we do. Maybe the community will say nothing. Maybe the community will say lots. And so we are open to hear what's going on with that, and it's a pretty exciting process. And over my career, you know, I've had people ask me about it for a long time. I've tried lots of different strategies. I've done lots of work with it. Sometimes I ignored it. It keeps coming back. And so it's time to hear from the community on that. We're excited about it. And then for the rest of my update, I'd like to kick it to Mr. Clark Tenney, who shared with us some really cool, interesting enrollment information recently.
Yeah, okay,
So here it
thanks.
is.
Well, I appreciate that. We get emails from the Department of Education all the time on a variety of topics. We got one recently that had census data by school district. That's not something that we usually see. We can see how many people live in Prescott, or how many people live in Yavapai County, how many people live in Arizona, but how many people live within PUSD, I thought was very interesting. They broke it down even further. It looks like we've got up here. Broke it down even further by the age group that we would typically find in our schools, ages 5 through 17. And so as I looked at that, I looked at some of our neighboring districts, and I found some interesting comparisons. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to share this with the district admin team. And Joe said, hey, you know what, this is a current event for sure. You got this data 2 days ago. Let's share it with the board and the public who are at our meeting. So here we go. You can see that. So you probably know our school district boundaries don't align perfectly with the city of Prescott boundaries, right? We've taken Williamson Valley and some peninsulas of the county and other unincorporated areas. The same is true for Humboldt. They take in Prescott Valley, but they also take in Dewey-Humboldt and unincorporated areas in between there. Same for Chino Valley, et cetera. So you can see the exact population as of last year's census estimates based on the previous year's actual census counts of who lives in which district's boundaries. I was interested to see that they're just slightly more in Prescott's boundaries than they're on Humboldt's boundaries. That was of interest to me. I was not surprised at all to see that there are fewer children living in Prescott than our neighboring districts, but I was surprised at how many fewer children. We hear a lot about, enrollment and whatnot. Why is your enrollment going down a little bit? Well, here's one of the reasons that over the last 10 years our enrollment has gone down a bit is we don't have nearly as many children per capita here in our Prescott Unified School District boundaries as the others do. So you can see up there pretty clearly the case there. I don't know what it is. I've got all the data here, and I can make the link available to the board if you'd like, although it came from the ADE, so I'm confident it's on their website. You could certainly find it yourself, but if you're interested, let me know, and I'll share that with you, and you can compare any school district in the state with this same data. So I thought that was super interesting. I thought something else was interesting as well. As I looked at that, I thought to myself, well, I know what our enrollment is, so I reached out to John Scholl in Chino Valley School District and said, what's your actual headcount enrollment today? Reached out to Court Minor, who's the assistant superintendent in Humboldt, said, what's your actual headcount enrollment today? And I did some quick figures there. You can see the number of kids that essentially make up our possibility of our enrollment in each school district, right? And then there's our enrollment next to it in the next column. And you can see if we take enrollment as a percentage of the kids living in each district, the percentages are kind of interesting. A couple of things to note here. First of all, pre-K numbers are included in the actual headcount enrollment for each of the 3 districts, and pre-K is not included, of course, in the ages 5 to 17 grouping that the census data comes up with, so that's something to be aware of. It's a relatively small number in each district, but it will skew this data a bit. And then 18-year-olds are also not included, and each of the school districts would certainly have some 18-year-olds enrolled in their high schools right now. So the actual percentages themselves are not strictly accurate of all of the kids who could be going to Humboldt versus all the kids who do, or all the kids who could be going to PUSD versus all the kids who do. But the comparisons are the same from district to district. And I thought it was interesting that Prescott Unified School District is the highest of the 3. That's in spite of the fact, you want to go to the next slide? I got with Tim Carter and I said, hey, give me some data on what impact charter schools could potentially have on enrollment. And he confirmed for me, well, I confirmed by looking online, and I think it may, oh shoot, I've got the data. Anyhow, Arizona has the highest enrollment of charter schools, students in charter schools of any state in the United States. And I confirmed with Tim Carter, according to him, Yavapai County has the highest number of charter schools per capita. So you're right here in the you're in Charter School Central, right here, as you sit, right in the center of the part of the United States where the most students would go to charter schools, and this kind of bears that out. These are both charter schools and private schools, but you can see that we've got 7 or 8, maybe 9, 10. Holy cow! Let me count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 10. There's 10. 10 charter schools and private schools with fairly significant enrollment. When I say significant, I'm talking at least in the few dozens, up to hundreds and hundreds, right here in Prescott. There's a small handful in Prescott Valley as well, and then there's a couple in Chino Valley. But Prescott has, because of our demographics and some other things, again, you're in Charter School Central here, and we attract charter schools like whatever it attracts, honey attracts flies. And in spite of that, we have the highest percentage of students who could be enrolled in our school district of our neighboring communities. So I thought that was interesting data that I wanted to share with you.
Thank you, Clark.
Yeah.
Any questions for Joe or for Mr. Tang?
Seeing a lot of great accolades in sports these days. So how are we looking?
I think we're looking good. I don't want to steal the girls' thunder.
Oh, you got some stuff for us?
But they always come with thunder. But y'all are going to want to get to a basketball game as soon as possible.
You're not kidding, huh?
And I know I don't have to tell you to go to wrestling matches. That's a given.
That's right.
We're going to go anyway.
All right, great.
Any other questions? Okay, governing board members' reports first, and then we'll do our student reports, promise. Any reports from the governing board members on activities or things that you've done in the period of time?
I did go to the Lincoln School, or elementary school, Christmas carols down in the square. Must say, very impressive performance. We had a lot of citizens just come out and watch. You know, it looks like we did on the south side of the courthouse this year because of the ice. And it was kind of neat because a lot of people just from business, from the local businesses just came out for lunch and and sat on the lawn or sat on the, the sidewalk and just thoroughly enjoyed that. And I think from a perspective of community members, they were just saying how great it is that, Prescott does it, that Prescott schools do this, and we're very unique and, we hold to the tradition. So very, very impressive.
Well, I got to judge their Halloween pumpkin contest at Lincoln, too. That was a big deal. Quite a variety.
Well, I went to Prescott High School with Joe the other day and got to see a couple classrooms and some teaching, some really good teaching going on, and met some people that I'm going to go to lunch with later, and because we used to be neighbors. And so it was really enjoyable to get back into the schools themselves. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Joe.
It was a fun morning. Thank you.
And kind of similar to Stan's experience, I was at Acronite this year in December and was just super impressed with all the high school students that were out promoting their work, the music students, and collecting money for scholarships that Acronite benefits our students here in the community. So much happens around here, and later on I have some other information to share, but it's just great to see our students like that and being out front and center. That was really impressive, I thought. So. Any other reports? All right, Ellen Miranda, please.
Okay, so we're starting semester 2 now. We're 4 days in, so this is quarter 3. And exam incentives are still in place, so if you have an 85% or higher by the end of the semester, you don't have to take your finals, which I know we're both big fans of. Over winter break, all of the sports still continued, so soccer, wrestling, basketball, we're still competing. I know some people are pretty excited about that. Basketball especially is doing really good this season. They had tournaments over break for the Lady Badgers Winter Classic and Judy Dixon tournament at Greenway High School, which the boys ended up winning overall. As for sports, there's been a big change in the registration from Register My Athlete to a new website called Final Forms, which all of the student athletes have been instructed how to transition to that, and I did it online. It took like 5 minutes, and I'm just excited to see how the new database kind of tracks things and hopefully gets scores in really quickly. So, also Galileo testing has commenced, and the new social studies curriculum that the board recently passed has been instated. So, pass it over to Elle.
Hi, guys. Right now, PUSD has free tutoring. Details can be found at the Prescott Schools website if any of you are interested in that. There's been a recent successful staff luncheon through Taco Don's and Anytime Fitness, so thank you, Taco Don's. Yearbooks are being finalized currently with senior ads, which have been sold out, sadly. December wrapped up with a lot of scholarship workshops and informational meetings offered for the graduating seniors this year. National Honor Society is hosting a dance this month, and we're looking for more chaperones, either teachers or parents. So keep your calendars open. Oh, board. It could be board members.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
Chaperone a dance.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah. January 16th, we have off for MLK Day. And then we're all counting down the days for spring break, which comes in March. Yeah, if you need to know. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move to action items, and the first item is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about the items on the consent agenda? Okay. Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? motion passes.
I would like to thank again all the people who donated to all the schools.
Yes.
So thank you. A lot of people in the public have been very, very generous. So thank you, all you people who have donated to different schools.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's
Yeah.
really important. And we'll move to our study and voting session. Sarah, have there been any requests to speak? Okay, thank you. So the first item, this is our organizational meeting. The first item on the study and voting session is to consider nominations and election for the position of governing board president. Joe, do you have anything to say?
No, I can help the process and procedure, but basically it becomes a nomination piece and a discussion therein and then votes.
Nominate Carl Woods for president.
Is there a second?
Can I second myself?
You can.
I will second myself then.
Okay, we have a nomination of Carl Woods, a nomination that's been seconded for Carl Woods for governing board president. Is there any discussion? Cara, do you accept?
Yes.
Okay.
That's important to know that you want to do it before a vote.
Okay, the state statute requires that this be a voice vote. So all those in favor of Carl Woods for president of the PUSD governing board, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Say
Nay.
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 Nay. Motion does not pass.
I move to nominate Andy Frayer as board president.
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Andy Frayer be nominated as president. Is there any discussion? Okay, I do accept the nomination. So we will vote, again, as a voice vote. All those in favor of Andy Frayer as president of the PUSD governing board, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes. Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Cara. Item 2 on the study and voting session.
Point of
is
order.
n- I'm
Andy,
sorry.
don't we need to vote on a vice president?
That's
The
item
second
2.
thing. That's the next one.
Item 2.
Oh,
Item 2 on the study and voting session is to consider nominations and election for the position of governing board vice president. Is there anything, Joe, that you'd like to add?
Same process. And if there's discussion, we can talk about duties. Typically, the vice president is there to cover if the president isn't there. It just depends on things, but that is not often called upon. But tonight's an example is that we didn't have a president, and so we asked Andy to preside until the vote. So, but I can answer any questions, or that can be discussed on a discussion point.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to nominate Stan Golagowski to serve as the vice president on the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion about Stan Golagowski serving as vice president of the governing board? Hearing none. Stan, do you accept the nomination?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, all those in favor of the nomination of Stan Golagowski for vice president of the PUSD governing board, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Nay?
nay.
Motion carries 3-1. Okay, so Andy Frayer is elected as governing board president. Stan Golagowski is our current governing board vice president. Congratulations.
Thank you. So traditionally, what we've done during the meetings after the vote is we move chairs, and so the president does not need to move, but I would suggest that Cara and Stan trade seats. Little musical chairs.
I'm taking the chair because I got my jacket and everything. I warmed this one
It
up.
says nothing in the bylaws about the chairs. Move chairs.
They have wheels. Take the chair.
Sodas,
Yeah, you
nameplates.
my plug. Oh, yeah, I don't want to be you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, the next item in our study and voting session, item 3, is to consider approving the dates and times for the governing board meetings for the upcoming year 2023. Sarah, do we have that available to put up? It was in our board book packet for review, but if we could put it up so that the public can see.
And some of you may remember that the previous board voted just for this one meeting to allow the current board to then take a look at your own dates and times and make.
And if I'm
make a
correct, this
decision
is the, what are we, the second Tuesday or the first Tuesday?
on that. First Tuesday.
First Tuesday of the month.
Unless there's been a break, then we have a delay, so so our staff has.
And we can modify them if we come across some kind of.
Absolutely. Which usually happens, especially in the summer. There's some budget parameters, as some of you know, that where we have to figure out when the state comes out with their budget worksheet and the whole piece. And so in that process, Sarah's in touch with the board to figure out when everybody can meet in that whole piece, so.
Yeah, I notice a couple of dates that don't fit that guideline. June 27th, for
Yeah.
instance.
It's a long time between meetings.
Yeah.
Brian, you want to talk about what the state requires between those two meetings?
Correct. The June meeting is where where I present the proposed budget. And there is a timeline the state puts out. In fact, from the time that the proposed budget to the adopted budget, it needs to be within 15 days. And so the end of June makes it the proposed, and then the July is the adopted, and it falls within that timeline. It's also very beneficial to have a later date in June for the proposed. We were one of the few districts that actually had the numbers accurate with the late legislative decisions last year. And so the date in June is later because of the proposed, and it's within the window that needs to be for the budget timeline.
And it is possible, you know, we have a lot of important business to take care of this year, as you all know. If we need to have a meeting at that point in time in early June, it's possible that we could schedule a retreat at that time as a meeting to get together so that we are not behind on anything. Or if anything does come up, then we'll call a special meeting.
Yeah, and just typically a couple examples of those in my career. I mean, we have a couple every year typically. Sometimes it'll be a last minute or something that got missed in terms of a out-of-state travel for a group of high school kids, and that might be a time that we all come together. It depends on the board's availability. In the past, we've done that a lot at noon on a Thursday or a Friday because that's when everybody could come in. But basically, Sarah will pull you guys and figure out what best works for you, and we'll get you in on those. A couple of others have been typically budget things where the legislature waits till last minute or does something brand new, and we have to respond to it immediately. Those are, and I don't know if admin can think of other examples, but those have typically been what we've done those for.
I'd like to ask why we meet at 5 o'clock. A lot of my constituents work, and they don't get off work until after 5 o'clock, or at least they couldn't. So I'd like to see if we could start at 6.
We've seen it lots of different ways over the years. Typically, we like to get our staff home because they're at work at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so lots of times our staff will be here presenting or part of that type of thing. And so It's a tough call. We can look at what's best for public or staff, for our students and the whole piece, but the 5 o'clock, the district often says, the earlier we can meet, the better it is for our staff, so we can get them home. Our principals usually start very early in the morning.
I think we should consider the parents a lot higher priority than the staff, unfortunately. I think 6 o'clock would be, and I don't know how to, do we make a motion on that, or what do we do?
We'd have to have a motion to amend the proposed schedule, to start that at 6 o'clock, before we could vote on that item.
And you could, just for an example, you could also amend a few dates if that was an issue. You know, there could be a couple of amendments to that if needed.
So if you'd like to make a motion to amend, we can consider that.
Okay. I'd like to amend the calendar for the coming year time, start time for 6 p.m.
Okay. There's been a motion to change the start time of governing board meetings to 6 p.m. as opposed to 5 p.m. Is there a second for that motion?
Well, I guess it does.
Not hearing a second, then the motion does not move forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda. Any other questions about our proposed meeting dates? Okay. Could we get a motion to approve the dates and times for the governing board meeting for the year 2023?
I'll approve the dates and times for governing board meetings for the year 2023 as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the dates and times for governing board meetings for the year 2023 as presented. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Okay, our next item of business is to consider approving stipends for special education paraprofessionals as presented. Mr. Clark Tenney.
A little more formal presentation. I'll come up to the mic. And I forgot when I was asked to speak earlier to apologize for coming in at the last moment. That's not my typical mode. It's at a city council meeting, and I had intended and made arrangements to leave between agenda items if necessary. We were right in the middle of an agenda item that was especially emotional for the folks who were speaking, and I felt awkward about standing up and saying, "See ya, I'm going to a board meeting." So, anyhow,
See ya.
yeah. Apologize for coming in a little bit tardy. So as the agenda that you got before you mentions, for quite some time we've had, well, let me back up and just say that generally in Arizona it's getting harder and harder to hire education professionals, whether it's teachers or superintendents or paraprofessionals or bus drivers. That's the case. There are surveys that are done every 6 months. I just got the new survey in an email this morning that asks, what's your situation in PUSD? We report that. We get that data back from the Arizona School Personnel Professionals Association, and it shows that as of this last survey, there were over 2,000 teaching positions in Arizona unfilled and over 1,600 parapro positions unfilled. We're very fortunate here in PUSD that we've got pretty much everything filled as far as teachers are concerned. We've got 216 teaching positions. Well, we've got about 460 employees total. You're probably aware of that. We've mentioned that here in these meetings before. 216 of those are teachers, and we have 1.5 positions open right now. We've got a special education class that we're filling with a long-term substitute. We'd ideally like to hire a fully certified permanent teacher there, but we're making do right now with something else. So that's posted for us, and then we've got a half-time math position at Mile High. If anybody has extra time in their schedule and is great at math, maybe they could help us out with that. But at any rate, that makes for 0.6% of our teaching positions are open right now. That's spectacular. I don't know that you're going to find another district in Arizona with 99.4% of their positions, teaching positions filled with a certified teacher. Parapros is a little bit different. Parapros generally, we've got 69 parapro positions filled. Paraprofessionals or teachers' aides is a more common term that people are familiar with. We've got 10 of those posted as open right now. That changes almost every day. Whereas our teachers are on contract for the entire year, because teachers are on contract for the entire year, it's very rare for a teacher to leave mid-year. It does happen occasionally with, somebody has a health issue or family issue or whatnot, but that's very rare. Teachers are on contracts, but our paraprofessionals are on agreements, at-will agreements. We can hire them at any time during the year, and they can choose to leave at any time during the year, or we can say, it's just not working out. We don't typically do that. We're really grateful to have the people who work for us, and we work with them to get better at what they do if we're feeling like it's not working out. But at any rate, 69 positions filled, 10 open. That means 7.9% of our parapro positions are open. Again, 0.6% of teachers, almost 8% of our parapro positions open. Of those 69 parapro positions, 12 of them are in what we call our best two classes, our severely and profoundly disabled special education classes, or our emotionally disabled special education classes. The kids in those classes can be a little bit more challenging to work with at times, and we have a really hard time recruiting and retaining there. That was the case with teachers in those classes up to about, what's it been, 4 years ago, I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago. We started offering significant stipends on top of the regular teacher salary and 301 money to teachers in self-contained classrooms at different levels, depending on the likelihood of it being a challenging assignment. And that's essentially taken care of our issue with hiring in those places. In fact, we will often fill our EDP classes, we call them emotionally disabled classes, and severe and profound classes, sometimes with teachers before our other special education classes because of the additional financial remuneration that comes along with that. So, as we've looked at this issue broadly, we're on the district administrative team level, we're coming up with some ideas for ways that we can help to attract and retain paraprofessionals more broadly going forward, and we've got a couple of ideas that we plan to come to you in the spring as part of our budget package for how we do that more broadly. Specifically right now, though, we've got an issue in these two types of classes where our most challenging students are. 12 of those positions are filled, but 5 are open, which means that 29% of those positions are not filled. So again, 0.6 for teachers, 8% for parapros generally, 30% almost for these classes. So we felt like we've got to do something. We can't wait until the kind of the budget season, so to speak, to bring this as part of a broader budget package. We need to come to the board earlier with an idea to do this. And what we'd like to do is what's been successful for our teachers in these classes, which is to offer an extra stipend, which would make up a significant portion of this person's salary. Obviously, paraprofessionals have a different level of qualification, different level of responsibilities, and they're paid at a different rate. And the proposal is for paraprofessionals in our our best two classes, or our severe and profoundly disabled classes, to receive $1,500 a year. That would be balanced over the course of a year. So if a person is there for half the year, they would get half that amount, et cetera. And for those in our EDP classes and our RISE class at the high school, which is it's a severe and profound class, but the kids are Stan Golgoski's size and whatnot. So if things go sideways, it's really difficult and challenging to work with them sometimes. At any rate, in those classes, for the stipend to be $2,000. So $1,500 for the one level class and $2,000 for the other level class. This is again a proposal that we had planned to bring to you as part of a budget package later on with more broad attempts to attract and retain paraprofessionals, but we feel like there's kind of an urgent situation right now to get more folks into these classrooms helping us out. Right now, we are making do with substitutes here and there, and an administrator will come in for part of the day and whatnot. So we're staffed appropriately, but we're not permanently staffed appropriately, and we feel this will help make a difference there. So with that, I would like to hear any questions that you might have about this.
I have just a quick one. Is the stipend retroactive if they've been here for the entire school year?
Great question. So the board has not approved it yet, but if you did approve it, yeah, the way that the motion's written is for it to be going forward. If you wanted to change the motion for it to be retroactive, that is possible. But the idea was that starting tomorrow, if you decide to do that, and again, prorated for the year going forward.
Is this a monthly, do you give it to them monthly or after they
Yeah,
finish
again,
the whole year?
it's an annual stipend, so depending on what part of the portion of the year they're with us, and it's paid out in a balanced way over the course of the year in their paychecks.
Every paycheck.
So it doesn't come in a lump sum. Every paycheck, they would get a portion of that.
Okay, so we can't wait till the end of the year, like make them stay the whole year and then pay them?
Well, that's a great idea, and it's exactly part of what we will be coming to in the spring with more broadly to both attract and retain paraprofessionals, including these paraprofessionals. Yeah. So we're looking at some bonuses at the end of semesters for those who had stayed the previous semester, et cetera. Yeah. In this case, again, we're looking at what we've done successfully with teachers and trying to replicate that on the paraprofessional level with these stipends.
How do we compare with the other districts?
In terms of the amount that we pay or how many of our positions are open, which?
Amount we pay to the
Great question. I appreciate you asking. So just this last year, the board asked us to do a comprehensive look at all job categories within the district, whether it's paraprofessionals or bus drivers or groundskeepers or teachers or whatnot. And we made comparisons with both of our neighboring districts and with our region as well. So North Phoenix and Flagstaff and everything in between, looked at that. And then we got the averages of those, went 3% higher and came to the board last year with that. The board approved that. So as of the start of the school year, we were 3% higher across essentially all categories than our neighboring districts.
Why don't we raise that then instead of just giving a stipend? Well, I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah, great question. So with our teachers, it stands out more for the teachers, and also each job category is paid a certain amount. We could break this out as a separate job category and say, okay, now we're going to pay this job category this much more, et cetera. But yeah, this is the proposal, the way that we've got it at this point. Again, it follows the pattern that we've used with teachers, and as we advertise, this tends to stand out to people. There's a $2,000 bonus annually that comes along with this, and people say, okay. If we find that's not doing what we like, we can say, okay, $2,000, what would that be hourly? We can say, okay, let's add 78 cents per hour, but we don't think that, based on our experience, it won't have quite the financial impact as we advertise.
We did implement something similar to this with our bus drivers and did a beginning of the year retention and then in the middle of the year. And since we've done some of these incentives, our transportation employee fleet, it's been great.
Yeah.
And I think it stands out as a dollar amount rather than just less than $1 per hour increase. They don't have something to compare to.
I can see that,
Yeah.
the benefit to that. That's good.
Yeah, it's a terrific question, though, why we don't just fold it into the hourly wage.
Thank you. What is, now, it doesn't look like on this whole thing, it's listed, but I don't understand replacement. What is that?
So it looks like you may be going back to the personnel report that was part of the consent agenda?
Yeah, not the purpose, I guess. That's not listed
It's not part of this
them.
issue. I'm happy to answer that question. Is it appropriate for me to?
Yeah, that's not part of this discussion, so that would have
So
to be
they
a
don't
separate.
get replaced or anything, it's just not on my form? where it
That's
goes.
a separate discussion or a
Looks like you're
separate
looking at a
item.
previous agenda
Oh,
item.
okay.
I'm happy to
So-
get with you offline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would suggest
Yeah.
talking to Clark after the meeting about
Sure.
that. He can
It's a
explain
super
that to you.
easy thing to explain.
Yeah.
So do we know why parapros are leaving these positions? So
Yeah, great question. So one of these positions, actually, we're on our third person in that position already, in the last 3 months. It's very challenging. The kids, in many cases, need to be diapered. We've got runners, we've got spitters, we've got kids who are nonverbal and whatnot. It's a challenging group to be in. And some people go in with their eyes open saying, that's me, that's where my heart is, I can totally do that. And if I'm being paid this much, it's worth it. And other people go in and they don't quite understand what they're getting themselves into. We try to make that clear in the interview process and in the hiring process, but sometimes it's just a little bit more. It's like being a board member. Sometimes it's more overwhelming than people thought it was going to be. And they
So
get there and
we're,
they say, wow.
So this is one thing that we're trying this to see if it'll help.
Right. Yeah, and again,
these
as we did
people
this
in.
with teachers, made a huge impact. Brian's right. He's talking about kind of a continuation bonus, which is similar with bus drivers, which is similar to what we're proposing more broadly for parapros, but that extra amount of money has made a difference. And particularly when we advertise it and pay it in
In a chunk.
in chunks. There you go. That's a good way to say it.
I have another question then. What is our population of severely disabled right now this year?
Ooh, that's a great question. Brian can dig that up for us. We have a total of the EDP classes. There are 3, is that right? Or 4? Do we have 4?
We have 3 EDP classes.
Okay.
Are you asking the total special education population or these ones?
In
The
these particular classes,
disabled.
yeah.
I don't know what the acronym is for that. I'm still learning
No, you're fine.
acronyms.
A K-8 and a 912 for severely underperforming.
Okay, so there's 2 each, you say?
Yeah.
Great. So of the classes, there's 4 of the best 2 classes, we call them, and 3 of the EDP classes. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, Linda, but I would guess, what about 5-ish kids per class is what we're looking is a good guess. So what
And
did
they
I say?
each
4
have
and
an
3,
aid?
7, about 35-ish kids.
Multiple
is my
aids.
best guess.
Okay, so it's a one-on-one aid and they're educational aids and,
Yeah, great question. So it depends on the enrollment in the class, and we flex with that enrollment, which is one of the other reasons why we have at-will paraprofessionals. We shift them around, and sometimes we need to hire partway during the year, et cetera. But at any rate, typical, if there's a class of 5 kiddos, there'd be a teacher and 2 paraprofessionals helping them out with 5 kids. That would be a typical ratio in these classes. That's certainly not typical in a physics class or a band class or a typical even self-contained special education class. But these classes, yeah, there's a need based on these students' identified abilities that.
so these aren't the mild, moderate.
Right.
Okay.
Correct. They're not, yeah. Although, again, that's a place where we have a harder time hiring as well. 8% of those classes are currently open. So we're looking at solutions for that going forward as well. But
this proposal is for a stopgap for the rest of this fiscal year.
Right, and
then we'll do the budget discussion for the future with
the idea
Brian
is,
as the budget is proposed.
Exactly.
Okay.
The idea is
got
if
it.
this is as successful as we anticipate that it will be, as versions of this have been with other employee groups over the last couple of years, that we would make this as part of our overall budget proposal for next year and going forward as well. Yeah, great question.
Then we do have a discussion on budget, but part of our budget process is if during the year we have an immediate need that we didn't foresee previously with the budget packages, we use one-time monies to have that funded for the year, and then if it's needed for the future, it would come in our budget package in March.
Right, okay.
Do we do exit interviews? I mean, of course, it's challenging. It always is with those requirements, but do we do exit interviews at all?
Are you talking specifically about this job category? If so,
Yes,
then we're on agenda
to
and
see
I'm happy
what we're not supplying them.
Yeah, we don't, good question. We don't have a formal exit interview where we say, principal, please ask this question in this way first, then ask this question in this way second, but always when people leave, the principals get with them about what it is. And it's typically, with these classes, one of 2 things. I can make more money someplace else doing something different, or, wow, this is more challenging than I thought. And sometimes people ask and choose to transfer from this class to, oh, I see you have a preschool opening, can I do that instead? That's not unusual either, that people stay within the district, but just this class, I didn't realize what it entailed.
What it entailed.
Yeah, great question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so the parapros and the teacher's aides, they're classified staff, correct?
Correct, yep.
And so there's less, so they don't have to have a college degree, they don't have, right? So this stipend would really increase their income, get them closer to what a certified class or certified staff member makes. I think it's a good plan, because then you're kind of a little bit closer to your peers and what you have to do. So anything that we could do to kind of close that gap, especially in something that is time consuming, that in these classes that you have students that need consistency. That separation anxiety is huge for these students. And if we have a revolving door, we have to have some consistency.
And I really appreciate you bringing that up. I can think of 4 situations off the top of my head, and there are probably more where we have former paraprofessionals who've decided, I love this, and I could see myself leading this class, and so they've chosen to go back to school, get their degrees in special education. There's a lot to it. It's not just, I'm going to go take those 2 classes and then I'm ready to go. But they've chosen to do that, and they're in our classes teaching for us now, former paraprofessionals who are taking these hard jobs on.
Do we provide some assistance there with their education? Is that something that we do?
The Teachers Academy is available
Right.
through our
The
state
state.
universities primarily.
These are terrific questions.
Great. Any other questions?
And I just have a comment, and I think that based on some of my prior experience, our staff members who work with the profoundly disabled kids, it is gut-wrenching.
Yes.
It is very, very difficult sometimes. It's after you've put in an 8-hour day, you feel you're wrung out. And I think anything we can do to improve their financial status even a tiny bit is well worth the effort on our part. And if you ever have the chance to observe a class like this for even a few minutes, you will realize these people are giving us their heart and souls to work with these kids every day.
Oh, I really appreciate
just
that.
my-
It's worth noting that oftentimes when it is a general rule, when we put more money into something, there's less money for something else. We don't have unlimited taxpayer funds to deal with. But in this case, the district administrative team felt it was worth going to the board for just the reasons that you suggest. The other piece that this will help with is consistency in those classes. We want consistency in any class, again, whether it's high school physics or second grade general education, but this is a class where these kids benefit specifically and particularly from seeing the same face, having the same solid object day after day, and with the structure that we've got for pay and the way that things are trending in terms of, wow, I don't get a lot of respect as a teacher in this community, and I don't get paid very much, and it's super hard, see ya. We need to reverse that trend. And so we're coming to you to do one of the pieces we feel we can do right now. And we'll work on the other pieces as we can.
And typically, these are 10-month employees, 7 hours a day. And when you do the math on that, it's probably about $20,000 that they make in a year. And so this is a 10% increase.
That's great.
And overall, as is mentioned in the packet as well, because there's so relatively few of these folks, and it's only a couple of $1,000s, I don't mean to minimize that. Taxpayer funds are sacred, but in our overall budget, it's a very small amount where we feel like we can make a significant impact right away.
Thank you. So we're open for a motion to approve stipends for special education paraprofessionals.
Well, I'd like to make the motion. I'm not sure how I should word it.
Leave out the word consider.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we approve stipends for special education paraprofessionals as presented.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve stipends for special education paraprofessionals as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Nice job, Linda.
And natural.
Item 5 is to consider approving IFB number 23-0123 for PUSD number 1 teach-rich housing at Taylor Hicks. Brian.
Would you like me to go to the podium? Or?
You can speak from wherever you'd like.
Well, thank you very much. I'll speak from right here. All right. School districts are bound by very specific and strict procurement law. And so whenever there is a larger project that the district is going to have in the future, whether that's a school facility board funded project, and in this case, it's the teacherage at Taylor Hicks, we have to follow procurement law. And procurement law states that unless a company's on a cooperative, which means they've already been vetted for price and quality, we have to go through a sealed bid process, and there are 2. One is an IFB, an invitation for bid, and one is an RFP, a request for proposal. The specific difference between the 2 is an IFB is almost always construction. The end product, the end result is the same, really, no matter what company or what company puts in. An RFP, there are varying differences. An example for these two is an RFP would be an example when we went out to bid for our food service. Every food service is going to have different menus. They're going to have different ways to attract kids to want to eat. An IFB example in the past would be our bleachers at the high school and the main and auxiliary gym. We put forward the specs, the scope of work, and companies will put forward a similar product. With IFBs, the lowest bid wins. And the end result of a very complex process of going out to bid is bringing forward the awardee company to the governing board to vote and accept the process and that bid, and essentially awarding the contract to the company. And so we went through that process with the teacherage. As soon as we got the green light, our purchasing director, Kathy Moody, started in September working with a gal named Missy Mudgery, who is a procurement specialist that we contract out for larger projects like this. And in December, the IFB was due. And what you have in front of you is the winning company, and it's for your vote. If you have any questions for the process of an IFB, Kathy and I can assist you with the lengthy, complex process that is sealed bid procurement.
I remember you brought this to the board and we looked at it, but I don't remember ever approving that we would actually do it.
In August, it was brought and voted to not only approve the project, but also the funding behind it. And so once that vote in August was done, we started the IFB process.
And that was in what month?
August.
August. And we only got one bid in that time.
We put forward the scope, and Kathy, you want me to talk a little bit about the process? We put forward the vote. What happens is we put forward the scope. We put it on azpurchasing.org, which all companies have access to, seeing what bids are out there for the state, so they all view it. Then we had a, what is it called, a meeting? Pre-construction meeting at Taylor Hicks, in which we had two companies come to that. We had multiple questions afterwards in which we do addendums, and then we put that out, and then we have it due. And we did have one company, Southwest Homes, that did put in the bid. When there is only one, it does have to be needed to be vetted for price. They can't just win because they put forward a $20 million bid, and $1.3 million is right exactly around what we were expecting it to be. And they were deemed responsive, which means every document they put forward had all I's dotted, T's crossed, everything notarized. And this is the company that we are proposing for you to vote to say the contract's theirs.
In that process, it's also vetted, of course, through the consulting company.
Oh, absolutely.
An attorney follows it the entire way and then signs off of it, because procurement process is so extensive.
Absolutely. Kathy does a great job, but for these things, there are companies that literally all they do is Arizona District procurement. And we're wise to have relationships with a company called Sunny Path Associates, and Missy Mudgery is someone we've used for 8 years.
She did the IFP for this building to be remodeled.
Yep. And our Southwest Food.
6 years ago, I believe.
Yeah. So.
If I remember correctly, we voted on sending this out to bid in August and approved it. And that is so that the grant money that would match what we're doing can be awarded. Is that correct? Because there is grant money that could be coming from the county.
And it was interesting because in our district admin team meeting on Monday, we were talking about our agenda for tonight, and literally while we were sitting there, the grant application dropped. And a lot of those questions are, what have you done to prepare to be in running for the 500,000 matching grants? And I don't know what other districts have done, but because the governing board was wise to vote on this in August and we started the IFB process early, we will be ready to put in an application, and I think our I's will be dotted and our T's will be crossed, and we'll be one of the recipients.
That grant's a matching $500,000.
Yes.
And our time, I'm sure there are other folks that were working on this. I know Chino Valley was, but this puts us in the front of the line as we see things.
So how many teacher houses? I love the idea. I had to work almost my entire teaching career before I could afford to buy a house. And and that was only a condo. So I like the idea, but how many of these homes are we going to have? And don't we have to share them with police and fire? So won't that limit how many teachers and
I
who's
can
going
respond to
to
that.
Yeah, I was just gonna
manage
say.
it?
We don't have to share that with fire and police. We've been working closely with the city on affordable housing and talking about this for quite some time, and we've found that that will help them. They're in the same situation as us.
Right.
So 6 homes?
6.
6 homes, 4 would be for our staff, 1 would be for police, 1 would be for fire. That opens up future opportunities with the city of Prescott because we are sharing resources with them. And we know that there are several projects like this down the line. If this is successful and there are more grants, we hope to look at more projects. So this is teeing up a really nice partnership with the city of Prescott and maybe looking at it from a community standpoint instead of just taking care of PUSD.
So 1.3 mil for 6 homes? How big are these homes?
I believe they're 2-bedroom homes.
I'd like one.
And I believe they're 900
About
square
900
feet.
square feet.
Pardon?
900 square feet.
900? Okay. And who will manage them? Like if something goes wrong in the middle of the
The
night?
district will. And quite possibly in the beginning, we'll contract that out to a company that does that for.
There's stipulations in the law how revenue, whatever we deem that would be charged for rent, can be spent, and what the law says is it goes back into the teacherages and managing of it. And so anything we collect, it can't buy pencils for the teacher's closet or something like that. It has to go back to the teachers.
Sorry, I'm coming in the middle of it, so
okay.
it's like,
This
that's a
is all
big
brand new.
expenditure.
A lot of that part's already been approved.
Okay.
And because of the nature of utilities and things like that, it's actually not as much as I expected.
We would be paying their utilities and everything?
No, just the cost, because part of that 1.2 is all utility tying in, so it's not just placing the houses
Bringing them
there.
in.
So it's a big project to put 6 houses in the back of a soccer field.
I'd like more for the teachers.
When will we hear from the county? When do we anticipate hearing from the county on the grant application?
Clerk has that information.
So I've got it right in front of me. I want to say that they were saying March. Let's take a look
While
here.
he's looking, we've already like the email that came out yesterday said if you intend to apply, respond right away. And of course, we responded right away.
So grant applications are due at the end, toward the end of next month, February 21st, and their target for funding availability is May 1st.
Okay.
Committee will make final decisions in March. So again, it's a good thing that the board already discussed this and has given approval, because we would be behind the 8 ball if that hadn't already happened. And Linda, if you've got additional detailed questions about this, let's sit down. We'd be happy to fill you in very best we can.
You're on my list.
Great. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Are there any other questions? This issue. Okay. I'm open to a motion to approve IFB number 23-01-23 for PUSD number 1, teacherage housing at Taylor Hicks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve IFB 23-01-23 for PUSD number 1, teacherage housing at Dr. Taylor Hicks Senior Elementary School as presented.
Nice.
That was
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, nay.
Abstain. So
Motion
we're in
passes 3 with 2 abstentions.
Thank you very much. It was a long 2.5 months worth of work, and so thank you, and thank you to Kathy for all the hours she put in. IFBs are not fun.
Thank you.
And maybe one of the very first examples of a solution to a huge problem in our community.
And the city is also, as you said, working on these issues on their own, I believe, for fire and police housing as well. So I think there's great opportunities for collaboration here that we may see down the road.
I mean, as many of you know, I've worked closely in this project, and I've seen this be very successful throughout the nation. This isn't new, and this isn't new because we've had teacherages since the turn of the last century. So that's the reason that the term teacherage even exists, because we had, when a town started, they typically had their teacher in the local church where they held them, or put them up. And so that's stayed in our bylaws, and now we have a wonderful opportunity when we're exempt from city code because we're on district land. And the fact that we're working with the city, and the city is very receptive to this, and the fact that we can then leverage, like you said, police and fire, and then we can put it on land that not only we own, but also the city owns, to leverage more teachers going on this land. It's a much bigger picture, and this is really just the first step in this. And once we start cracking this code, you're going to see more of this. And it isn't just for teachers to where we're still focusing on their pay, but we're trying to reduce their cost of living in this area so that they can put more money in their pocket. And then in the end, after a few years, then they can then buy a house in the community, and then they homestead here. And then that goes to our retention. So we need to look at it that way, a much bigger picture than just building 6 houses.
When people ask me, why do you think your retention is significantly better than a lot of the districts in Arizona, I say, and this is my opinion, I think teachers know that as an administration and a board, we have showed that we do everything we possibly can to support our teachers. And so I think that's the formula that works.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Our study and voting items are complete. Now we'll move to information and discussion items. Our first item is Dave Paoli from Wright, Welker, and Paoli PLC. Since we have 3 new board members, we thought it was a good idea to include just some information on open meeting law, chain of command, board member visit parameters, things like that. And Dave, you're on the screen. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
There he is.
Can you hear me okay?
Talk a little louder.
Maybe speak up a little bit, Dave, if you can.
Okay.
And you can hear us okay, Dave?
I can hear you just fine, as long as you can hear me.
Okay.
Great. So we appreciate you being here. Basically, I think it's a good thing for our first meeting just to go through kind of a lot of these topics, particularly starting with the open meeting law, but also what our role as board members are moving into the chain of command in a school district, and kind of the things that we should expect when we're visiting schools, how to be perceived in those situations. Any suggestions and advice you can give us, we would really appreciate. So I'm going to leave it to you at this point, knowing those sort of things are on the topic agenda.
I appreciate that. It sounds like we've got 3 new board members who are sitting for their very first meeting tonight, so welcome to the new members. My name is Dave Paoli. I'm an attorney. I've been advising school districts now for a little over 20 years. Prescott for almost as long as that. Yeah, let me highlight a couple of things that I hope will be helpful for everyone, but especially for those members of the board who are new and have just taken their seats. There is a learning curve, as there is for anything that's new. And a couple of suggestions that I'll make to you is to first take a look at a couple of policies, district policies in particular. And the policies that I wanted to highlight for you are BBA and The title of that policy is Board Powers and Responsibilities. And then the one that's just after it is BBAA, and that's entitled Board Member Authority and Responsibilities. And so I just wanted to point out just a couple of key things from those two policies. On the first, BBA, you'll notice that the first duty and obligation of an individual board member is to become familiar with the law. And then when you look at the second policy, BBAA, it talks about how the powers of the board lie in its act as a public body. It goes on to say that individual board members exercise authority over district affairs only by way of votes taken at a legal meeting of the board. Tonight, that's exactly the setting that you find yourselves in. It goes on to say an individual board member has authority only when and to the extent that the board by vote has so delegated such authority. So when we talk about understanding the law and we talk about where the board exercises its authority in these types of meetings, probably the most important law for all of you will be the open meeting law. And so I wanted to touch just a little bit on some highlights of the open meeting law. Just to give you a little bit of background, the open meeting law has been in place in Arizona for about 60 years now. And it really has one purpose. And that purpose is to make sure that when this board discusses and takes legal action, that it does so in a very public setting. That decisions of this board are made out in the open, where anyone from the public can come, they can attend, they can listen, they can actually even record conversations, rather than having decisions be made in some back room where the public is simply not able to access or isn't invited to observe. So the open meeting law is about bringing transparency. It's about bringing sunlight to the process by which this board makes its decisions. So a couple of key things when we're talking about the open meeting law. An open meeting starts with a notice and an agenda that is published and posted at least 24 hours before a meeting. So if this board is going to meet, the public needs to be aware of that at least 24 hours in advance. And with that notice, there will also be an agenda. And that agenda, as you've got one here tonight, identifies everything that this board may be discussing and making legal decisions on during that particular meeting. So the agenda both describes and also circumscribes what the governing board may discuss and decide at a meeting. The reason why I say it circumscribes is because if there's something that's not listed on the agenda, that is something that the board should not be discussing and certainly not taking legal action on at that meeting. So the agenda defines exactly what will happen at the meeting, and it gives adequate notice to the public in advance so that the public knows that if they have interest in a particular matter, that they can show up. One of the questions that I get asked quite frequently is, how are these agendas developed? The agendas are developed in a consultation between the superintendent of the school district, who's the chief administrative officer, and your board president. And that's probably the primary role of your board president, is to be involved in that consultation process with the superintendent in putting together the agendas for upcoming meetings. I think that's the most important role of your board president. So you got your agenda, and that defines the meeting itself that's going to occur. Let's talk about exactly what is a meeting. A meeting is defined as a gathering and that gathering can be in person, as you all are right now. The gathering could even happen by technology. Of course, I'm appearing right now by technology. There may be future meetings where one of you as a board member are not physically able to attend a meeting. You may be on vacation, you may be out of town on business. You can still participate in that meeting through technology. So depending on what's available for your technology at the district, you may be able to call in. As long as you can hear the discussion and as long as there's a speaker so that the audience and the other board members can hear you, you can participate in a meeting by phone. You can do it even by video conference like I'm doing tonight for tonight's board meeting. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in person. It can be done through technology, but it's a gathering of a quorum. And when I say a quorum, I'm referring to a majority of the board members for the purpose of discussing any kind of district business. So a quorum or a majority for you, you're a 5-member board. Obviously, 3 of you constitute a majority. In other words, 3 of you constitute a quorum. So anytime 3 of you are communicating about district business, that is a meeting. So anytime there's a meeting, the public, as I said, is invited to attend. They're invited to listen, and they even have the right to record any of the discussion that occurs in an open meeting. The only thing that members of the public cannot do are interrupt the meeting. And if a member of the public wants to address the board, they have to get permission from you as a board to do so. Okay. One other thing that's happening as we speak is that minutes are being kept. You notice that one of the first things on your agenda for tonight was to approve the minutes from the last board meeting in December. So you've got a process in place, you've got an individual who's designated to make sure that the discussion and the legal actions of this board are recorded in the minutes. Please take seriously that obligation. When you get the minutes from the prior meeting, make sure you read through them and make sure that they accurately reflect to your recollection what was discussed and what was decided at the prior board meeting. That becomes a record so that even if an individual missed a board meeting, they can go back and they can review the minutes to see what was discussed and what was decided at the last board meeting. Now, I told you that the public, by and large, is entitled to attend and listen and even record the discussion of this board at a meeting. There are some limited exceptions to that rule. We refer to those as executive sessions. And you may find that with every board meeting, you might have an executive session or two. Let me give you some examples of things that may be appropriate for executive session. You may be in the process of negotiating a contract. It may be a contract with an employee. It may be a contract with a vendor. As a board, you may want to keep confidential what you're willing to pay an employee or what you're willing to pay a vendor. Well, if you do that in an open meeting, then you lose all leverage, all negotiating power, because now everybody knows what you're willing to pay. So that type of discussion can occur in what we refer to as an executive session. And an executive session is one of those rare instances where you as a board can have confidential discussions about a particular matter that is confidential. Another example of an executive session might be as if you're dealing with a matter of student discipline. A student who is appealing a long-term suspension or who is challenging a recommendation to expel the student. Obviously, when you're dealing with a student who's most likely going to be a minor, you've got some very sensitive information that you're dealing with that really isn't for public consumption. So that would be another situation where an executive session would be the appropriate course to take, and the board could address those matters outside of the public's view. Now, one thing I want to talk about, and I think this is one area where board members tend to get themselves into trouble, and so I want to give you some practical guidance about a term. The terminology that's used is, it's called splintering the quorum. That's kind of the legal term that's used. Splintering the quorum occurs anytime that two board members, the most common example is two board members have a discussion about an item of district business. They do that outside of a properly noticed meeting. So you may call a fellow board member, or maybe you run into a fellow board member on the street. The two of you have a conversation, and your conversation touches on a matter of district business. If it's just two of you, there's not a violation of the open meeting law, because that's not a meeting, because just two of you is not a quorum. The problem is that if one of the two of you then runs into a third board member and shares with that third board member something that you just discussed with that other board member, you now have a serial conversation outside of a properly noticed meeting, and that is a violation of the open meeting law. So you need to be cautious about that. You know, I encourage you not to have conversations with a fellow board member outside of a meeting, but you can. It's not a violation of the law, but remember that if you have a conversation with one board member, you cannot then have a second conversation with another board member, because then now you will be violating the open meeting law. Let me give you another example of where this will happen. It's a very common practice for superintendents between board meetings to send out, usually by email, an update between meetings, just letting you know as board members, here are some things that are happening or have just happened within the district. That's a very common practice. I think Mr. Howard probably does that with the board to some extent. The one thing you cannot do as a board member is reply all to that email, because all board members will be copied on that email. If you as a board member reply all, now you've just communicated with all other board members about an item of district business, and that is a violation of the open meeting law. As a practical matter, my advice to you is to never reply all to an update that you receive from a board, from a superintendent, or from any other district employee. In fact, I would even caution you against replying to that email at all, even if it's just to the sender. Instead, the safer approach is for you to pull up an entirely new email and send it just to the one person that you want to direct it to. That way you don't run into an inadvertent violation of the open meeting law. Having said that, I want you to know that violations of the open meeting law are not all that uncommon. There are ways to handle violations of the open meeting law. For example, if you take action that wasn't properly on an agenda, the law allows you to go back and correct it. So for example, at the upcoming meeting, you could ratify an action that was taken earlier that may have been improper in some way. Another thing that I'll tell you is that if you make a mistake and you violate the open meeting law, it's always better to self-report. There is an open meeting law enforcement team. The acronym is OMLET, and it's headed by individuals who work at the Arizona Attorney General's office. I deal with these folks all the time. I'll get a call from a superintendent or a board member saying, I accidentally violated the open meeting law. Here's what happened. We can call up the open meeting law enforcement team and self-report, and usually there's no consequence at all. They may make a record of it. They may ask that you go through additional training, but that's usually the extent of what happens. If you don't self-report, if the report comes or the complaint comes from a member of the public or from a member of the community, the consequences can be harsher. There can be civil penalties that can be assessed against you. And in really egregious situations, a board member can be removed from office. So if you make a mistake, don't hide it. Come forward, be open and honest about it. Let us work with you. We'll get a self-report made, and in almost every case, the consequence is very minimal. So don't be afraid to come forward if you think you made a mistake. We can help you, and we can get the proper reporting made. So that's kind of the highlights of the open meeting law. Are there any questions about that?
No?
No
questions.
Maybe I do have one. I'm still uncertain how to get things onto the agenda and know that they're going to be on the agenda before the meeting or before the agenda comes out and I see it's not there.
Okay. So as a board member, there are two primary ways that you can ask for something to be included in an agenda. For example, as the meeting is concluding, you can say, I would really like to see something on a future agenda, even the next agenda, and let it be known that that's, what you'd like to see on the agenda. The other thing that you can do is you can reach out to the superintendent and say, I'd like to see this on an upcoming agenda. Will you see that this is included? The decisions about what's included on the agenda, as I said, that's primarily the role of the board president. I always tell board presidents, make sure that you're working cooperatively with the other members of your board. If a board member wants to see something on the agenda, do everything that you can to make sure that it's included.
Okay. Is there an Arizona law then? I looked everywhere and could not find Arizona statute that says that only those two people can set the agenda.
Right, so there's nothing in Arizona law, but there is a district policy on how the agenda is put together. If you give me a minute, I can probably identify for you which policy it is in your manual.
The only thing I could come close to was ARS 38-431, and I'm not sure if, I'm looking at it.
Right.
And it's the ASBA policy is BED, like bed, BA.
And that's our district policy. That's been adopted
Yeah,
as
that's the
district policy.
The law that you just cited is the open meeting law. And the open meeting law does talk about the requirement of having an agenda, but it doesn't talk about how the agenda is put together and developed.
But the law is referenced at the bottom of that policy that you have right there. I can show you. It's a little smaller.
Okay.
Every policy has the law that it's based on right at the bottom there.
Great, thanks.
Dave's frozen.
He's lost in computer land.
It's just his personality.
Sorry, Dave, you look frozen.
No, I was just trying to see if so your excuse me, your board policy is BEDBA. It's entitled Agenda Preparation and Dissemination.
Yes.
And it's, the first thing it says is the superintendent will prepare board meeting agendas in consultation with the board president.
That's the first sentence, yeah.
Right.
Look at that last sentence of that paragraph. Shall I read it, or do you want to?
Copies upon request, is that what you're talking?
No, I'm talking about superintendent will check with other board members, and if 2 members agree that it should be on the agenda, it will be placed on the next agenda. See that?
Exactly.
I just need notifications so I know if it's, because I have people asking me, you know, are you going to get that changed? Okay. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's your district policy on how the agenda is prepared.
But it would be another board member, not some other people. So 2 board members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I was asking all kinds of questions and, okay, great. He's frozen again.
No, he's not. He's just very still.
You're going to have to get up and dance.
Oops, looks like
Oh,
we've lost.
there we lost.
I think we've lost everything.
Good.
Oh, there it is.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Dave, I have one. So I know that we've talked in the open meeting laws about the use of cell phones at meetings and having them present and, you know, just the perception of those that it could be perceived from the public that you're talking among board members. What's the latest take on that?
Yeah, so again, if it's just 2 board members communicating direct message or text or email, that's not a violation of the open meeting law. But if one of those members involves a 3rd board member in the communication outside of a meeting.
Yeah, Dave,
Now-
I'm sorry.
now you do
Let me
have-
clarify. It's during a meeting is what I'm saying. Yeah, I know so the Prescott Planning and Zoning, it's a policy, we've been advised, do not ever bring your cell phone out because of that perception. And I just want to see what your take is and what's the latest take on that.
You know, that's probably a good practice. You know, cell phones, well, you know, I don't know where exactly I come down on that. Cell phones can, you know, they can be useful to kind of look up some information quickly.
Yeah.
But they probably shouldn't be used to be communicating with, you know, another board member in a way that's not open to the public. That's probably not in keeping with the spirit of the open meeting law. But, you know, I've been in meetings before where, you know, something came up and I needed to educate myself on something and I would look something up and, you know, find some information.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but, you know, if I don't know, it looks like some of you have computers up on the dais.
There it is.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I have a hearing problem from years at the police department, and I have you on live transcribe is a communication device, and it does not record, but it's like a teleprompter.
Yes.
You know, and it transcribes as you speak. So I have to have it. I'm especially having trouble with you. I have an appointment with Costco tomorrow, hearing aids.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yes,
I think that's
it
the
picks
proper
it
use
all
of
up
technology.
as I speak and as he speaks.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I think the use of cell phones is very valuable. I just, you know, I received one piece of information about it, and I just want to make sure that we're not crossing any lines if we do use our phones. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have, just to follow up on that, I have heard it, if it's during the meeting, it could become public record. Is there any truth to that, Dave? Or?
So yes, you know, as a board member, if you're communicating as a board member on district business, that potentially is a public record that could be requested and may need to be turned over.
One other question I have, Dave, kind of on a different topic is chain of command and parameters for us. We're going to discuss a liaison program later that we've been doing previously already. Just want your take on kind of how you see those things working as individual board members going into the schools. What types of things, what's our role basically as board members visiting schools in that role as a board member?
Right. So that kind of goes back to something I said at the outset, that really your authority as board members is the votes that you cast at a meeting. And the majority of you will decide what the policy or the framework of the district will be. Outside of a meeting, as individual board members, you really don't have authority unless the board has voted to delegate you some assignment. I know one of the things that's always challenging for board members is when members of the public come directly to them, you know, and with an issue in a classroom, you know, I think this teacher doesn't like my son or daughter, you know, that always becomes a challenge. But one of the things that's very clear in policy is that when you get those types of complaints, you should be referring them back to the school. So if it's an issue with the teacher, the parent should be referred to the teacher. And if it's not resolved with the teacher, then it goes to the principal. If it's not resolved with the principal, then it goes to a district level administrator. And it usually works its way through that path before it ever comes to the board.
Perfect. Thank you. That answers my question. Are there any other questions for Dave at this point? Joe, do you have anything?
Nope. Great conversation.
Okay, I think we're pretty set. We're going to transition into just our own discussion on this, and you're welcome to stay on the line and listen, or
yeah, I did ask Dave to just stay on because
okay.
it kind of was a continued, just for this next part of the discussion, it's kind of continued board member role.
Okay. So from the information we've received and my point of view, I just wanted to have a quick discussion on our roles as board members, knowing what we've heard and know from professional development. I guess the thing I would say is that as board members, as soon as we step into a school, even though we are just a member of the public, we're not seen that way because we are board members. So there is a sense of, I don't know if you'd say power with that as you step into a school setting. And I just want to have a discussion about us being comfortable with that and realizing where we stand and not taking advantage of that situation with district administrators, with principals, with teachers, with students. We want to be sure that when we're out in front in the schools as we go into our discussion on liaison, that we're approaching that humbly, I guess. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I'm open to any feedback any of you have on this topic.
I was hoping we could continue what Deb Dillon had started, where we each adopt schools, and I know...
That's a later agenda item.
Coming up tonight.
Oh, it is?
We will be discussing that, yes.
Okay, because I know that wasn't your thing or something, so...
I wouldn't say that. I
thought you did.
No.
I apologize, I misunderstood you.
Yeah, but that is a later agenda item for
Okay.
us.
Great.
So we'll
Thank
have
you.
a discussion on that specific topic.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah, but just keep in mind as we go to a principal, you know, even if you are volunteering in the schools, for instance, or you go to see your kid in the schools or your grandchild, if you stop to see the principal, they may make every effort to do everything they can for you. And really, they wouldn't necessarily do that for any other parent in the schools. And so just being aware of that maybe and cautious with those requests and things when we go into the schools, I think is super important in our role as a board member.
Definitely. Especially the way kids treat other kids. If they know that you're there and you are the parent and you are also the board member, it can set up an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so. But we'll definitely discuss more about that in a few minutes. Okay, any other questions or concerns? Okay. Our next item, thank you, Dave, for being here with us.
Good to see you, Dave.
Have a good night.
Our next item, I would like to introduce a really special visitor who's going to talk to us. We have the next board, the new board for PUSD, a recommendation from the previous board for a superintendent succession plan. And we've brought in Ms. Joanne Hildy, who is a past president of the PUSD governing board, as well as a person who ran her own consulting firm to search for superintendents in the state. And she's just going to share some wisdom with us and give us some tips as we move forward in this process. I do want to keep in mind, as we discuss anything, if we discuss that succession plan, just keep in mind that if we discuss an individual, we should really break for executive session if we do that. We can discuss a position, but we should not be discussing an individual in this meeting. Okay? Okay, Ms. Hildy.
It's great to be here. Oh, sorry. I'm probably going to have to make it sit very low. Oh, okay. A new job description. First of all, congratulations to those who have been newly elected to a governing board, and to those of you who made the decision to continue to serve. There is nothing in a life that equals the commitment, both physically and emotionally and with your heart, as being a board member. I was a board member, and probably the second year, I was on the board for 7 years until my husband was transferred out of Prescott. Our second year, we ran a search for a new superintendent. That was a long time ago, and things have significantly changed. We had over 150 people apply, and we did the search ourselves. That is not anything I would recommend today at all. It is a very difficult pulling pieces together, and there are so many other people, maybe not so many other, but there are organizations and other people who do it.
Hildy, can I interrupt you? Who did you choose for superintendent, by the way?
Dr. James Howard.
Thank you. You did a very good job.
I was going to kind of skip that. Joe was a young kid.
Makes me blush. Then he'd show up in my classroom. You know.
Great choice.
That's proof of how long ago it was. Joe, I think, was middle school, so before we had middle schools. But hiring a new superintendent, doing a search for a new superintendent, is one of the most important jobs you'll have while you're on a board. A superintendent sets the tone, not just for a school district, but in a town like Prescott, he sets the tone for education in the community. And It's not a lone voice, but it's a collective voice of a board and a superintendent sending out messages that are important. And I think as you talk to people like me who've raised their children in Prescott and watch them leave and become very successful, and as they had children, they were desperate to get back to Prescott and copy for their children what they felt Prescott schools and the community of Prescott did for them. Now, that's the other side of that coin. There were not jobs where they could afford to bring a family to Prescott. But your job is education, and your job is to make it the best possible. There are a series of questions on searches, and my history with searches began with the search for Prescott School Superintendent, followed up by for a dean of a college of education, on, and eventually we had a firm of 3 people, a well-known superintendent, a board member from Southern Arizona, and myself, who had a great commitment to stakeholders in a community and the importance of their being involved. So here are some things, and I'm so glad you had the review of the open meeting law. You are going to have challenges often during a search, but you never, ever step beyond the open meeting law. One of your responsibilities, besides that important decision, is that you comply with the open meeting law every step of the way. And it's sometimes it's challenging, but I will tell you from experience, having violated the open meeting law on a poorly written segment of it, of which no one had an answer, but I still got a letter at home signed by Organized Crime and Racketeering Division of the Attorney General's office. And if you want a letter to make you sit down on the floor to read it, is one with that kind of signature. Now, they ended up apologizing and saying, yeah, you did, but it's our fault because it's badly written. But I don't think they're as apt to give those kinds of passes anymore. I think they've been tightening for years. So there are some steps in doing a search. And there's great flexibility. But here's what I have said to boards in the past. Do you have an apparent heir to Mr. Howard? Is it obvious? Does the whole town know it? Do you all appreciate that and expect to move in that direction? And that's highly unusual, highly unusual. But there have been cases where we have worked with the board just through the transition. It's usually the case where they're missing a key component of the position. So it's important to see if you can find a superintendent who has all of those. You have 2 options for your search based on the timeline of Mr. Howard's retirement. So you can do one now, hoping somebody has a little flexibility in their report time. I've had that happen, so it's not unheard of, but most of them would expect to start July 1. Another thing that will make a difference in your search, and I think the weather is in your favor this year, if the Midwest has a horrible winter, you have an increase in people looking to move. Very often they have been superintendents. They are at an age where they can take the retirement from that state and they can make the move. We were blessed by the Nebraska bad weather years ago. But we saw that over and over again. Bad weather will mean they will come. And that's helpful. You don't have to go with an out-of-state superintendent to do a nationwide, and what I learned, even a worldwide search. The internet means everything goes everywhere, so you don't have to do that. But that's your first decision. And then these options carry a commitment, a financial commitment, either an interim, depending on which option you choose, an interim, or if you go now, then there is the possibility of a 3-month overlap between hiring a new superintendent and the retirement. And finance directors, you rely on them heavily during a search. The other thing is you want to make sure that you have the funding availability to do the search. And again, you have a resource that can do that. My experience and my commitment was to always include within the information gathering stage as many stakeholders as possible. For instance, when we did a search, let me use I'd go into every school in a district at a certain time and ask for what are the qualifications and characteristics you're looking for from your superintendent. And we did it the old-fashioned way on flip charts. People appreciate seeing go on a flip chart their words, particularly if you have an audience of people who must have their voices heard, then you must make sure that happens. So we do schools, we do an evening meeting with parents, or an evening meeting or an after-school meeting, or both, and the evening meeting and the afternoon meeting would be advertised and opened to community members as well. That information you gather then comes to the board, and you don't attend those meetings. Just as was noted, you change the tenor when you walk into a room. The whisper runs, oh, there's board member so-and-so, and it changes. And you run the risk, if you attend those meetings, of changing the tenor of the voices. However, the consultant will come back to you, and you'll have a consultant just talking to you about characteristics and qualifications. And if that's what you want for this search, then you can ask for it. The other thing, as individual board members, you have a variety of experiences and knowledge, both of PUSD and education and Arizona. And in many cases, there's some leadership that you've learned from other places. So you take those and you build a complete team. You have to be a team to do a search. I don't think I ever began a search that I didn't have the majority of candidates call me and say, tell me about this board. And they push and they push and they want to know all of the details of a board. We were hired by a school district that I won't name, but I watched them take 45 minutes one night to approve a set of minutes that were only 2 pages too long because they were arguing over nitpicking words in the minutes. So when it was my time to speak, I had to stand up and say to them, how do you want me to answer the question, is this a good board and does it operate as a team? So you have new board members, and this is a running train when it gets started in terms of work. So you all must work very carefully and with great diligence to build a team. around these issues. Teams are built on each of your strengths, and they're a reflection of different priorities and beliefs, but have the skill and the commitment to building consensus. Because I've also had candidates say, like as we were approaching naming finalists, if you think it's going to be a 3-2 vote, withdraw my name. I will not go someplace on a 3-2 vote. So you need it, and it takes lots of time to build team and consensus in terms of making sure that you always have the knowledge you need. This is, that carries you through. Your consultant will post. They will gather your applications. They will screen them, and they will do initial reference checking generally. And then they will come to you in executive session and you will read, because these applications are essentially personnel files. So they don't leave a building unless it's to meet you in an executive session. But you will want, at that time, generally you make enough room for you to read the ones they forwarded to you. And we could always say, we didn't forward this person because of this, because of this. They didn't have enough experience. They've changed jobs every year or 2 years for 10 years. And, you know, or references were not good. This is not the end of anything that happens. Then you go into the interview process. We always made interview processes 2 days. One day they came and they visited every school facility casually, and that night we held, or the afternoon after school, we held teacher meeting for teachers and staff to come to. Night we held parent and community meetings, and we rotated everybody. So they weren't standing on a stage and the first person says all the good stuff and everybody else sounds like an echo. You don't want to do that to people, and it doesn't build your knowledge either. We also handed out response sheets, just 3 questions. What did you hear that reflected that they were a good representative for this district now? What were the primary leadership skills? And the third question was, did they say anything that created concern for you or represented a question that you needed to ask the next day in the interviews? Because as a consultant, I spent the night going through all of those and pulling out, actually making a compilation of what most of it said. So then we could ask them that question if they created that. The other thing that makes searches a little more difficult for Arizona, but I've never had it stop a good candidate, is you pay no expenses of a candidate. Because that's a gift of public funds, because they are not yet employees. So they pay their own travel, they pay their own hotels. Now, you know, a lunch in a cafeteria, you can probably get by with that. So they're watching. Those are great insights into schools very often. So that you don't pay those, but that means how important it is to these people to get to come. If you're finished and it's decision time, and you can make a decision, you can, when you name finalists, those have to be done in open session. You can agree with the cuts that a consultant might make as they share personnel files essentially with you in executive session. But this will be an important time for you to really be on your toes about executive session. There is another thing that some board members may want to do, And they may want to check references. And I would tell you, don't do that until you've spoken with the consultant and had a tutorial on checking references. It is a minefield in terms of the questions you may not, under any circumstances, ask, the questions that you can't press on. And so your consultant will give you those guidelines. And if you want to do it, then they will help you do it. And once you get to finalist or semifinalist, then you expect a lot of references to be checked. And it's key to you being comfortable. Nothing, and I used to tell candidates, we're no secret firm. If something is going on in your district, you better tell us ahead of time. If something's going on with you, tell us ahead of time. And I will tell you everything I know about this district. But I'm also a bit of a Pollyanna, so my stories were never too bad. But this will be grand. And Prescott has a history of a very, very long commitment to the students that attend Prescott Unified School District. And we have a long history of people going that extra mile and Prescott achieving for their kids. Andy and I briefly had a conversation, I should say Mr. Frere, Andy comes out naturally.
I was friends with her son, so.
Yeah, but as we talked about in our own families, next generation, our grandchildren, in my case, grandchildren, the roots of how they were raised came from here. And their educational successes of their dads, because we had only boys, the educational successes of their dads in this school district built their commitment to education for their children. So 4 out of 6 are well off into their careers, and 2 are just beginning universities. So it's not like we have 2 that went down to that someplace. But Prescott did that for them, and their children are now educationally succeeding. And what a legacy that gives. And it's in your power, it is your power, to make sure that commitment continues. Any questions?
I just want to say, following up on that statement, I'm so proud of this board and the experience we have. 2 of us are former students that went through the schools here. One was a teacher in our schools for almost 40 years and an Arizona Teacher of the Year. Cara taught in our school district for 10 years? 4 years. And Ms. Khan was a teacher for 25 years. So we have a lot of experience and a lot of Prescott experience sitting at this table. So I think what you've said is perfect for us because we should have that background and knowledge of what this community needs, I hope.
Oh, I am confident, and it's building that team. That is key, and I wish you so much. I quit doing searches when both partners retired, and they just got really hard to do alone. And now I am beyond the age at which a woman should be doing those things. So, darn it. Well, somebody ought to retire at 82 from something.
Oh, gosh, you can't be 82.
Any other questions?
The only comment I had, I think, piggybacks on what Andy said. You alluded to the fact, or to your belief in Prescott values.
Yeah.
From the bottom to the top. And I just think that's really important for us to remember that most of us here in Prescott have a set of core values that we really live our lives by, which evidently you have. That's quite obvious. And I think That's what we're looking for, too, in a superintendent, is someone that can take in our values and
Yes.
continue to demonstrate those values in as a superintendent, and because that's what most of us, that's what we're doing here. Most of us live here because of that.
Right.
So I really appreciate that.
Well, I wish you such success, and I'll be watching. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Mrs.
thank you for the honor of being able to do this. I wish I was still doing searches. This would be great fun, but no. I got to keep my hands
Rest.
behind me.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. So this is going to be, at least in my view, our biggest job over this next year, and I think we need to spend some time to discuss what our approach is and where we're going. And I'm going to ask Sarah to get with all of you, and let's find a time sooner rather than later so that we can set out our plan.
Have a
If that
special
sounds-
meeting.
Yeah, I would like to do that if we can.
I would also.
Thank you.
I was going to wait till the end, but okay, we're going to do it right now.
Yeah, so we'll be in touch, or Sarah will be in touch, and let's find a time when we can get together and spend some quality time on this topic.
Sounds good.
Go forward. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Hilding.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next item is our FY 23-24 budget prep. Mr. Moore.
I didn't know that I was supposed to do this tonight. All right. As I said earlier, I mean, really, for our new governing board members, I mean, there are times within the year that we're actually operating in like 3 fiscal years at one time, and most of the year we're operating at 2, within 2. And so this is going to be starting our new, what I call fiscal year 24, which is always the 23-24 school year for those that talk in school years. This starts our budget talks, because ultimately we operate on what's called our proactive budgeting model. And at the forefront of that is that, you know, at all costs, even if we have to sometimes look at efficiencies and cut, we need to give teachers and staff raises. If we don't do that, we don't keep up with our, well, specifically our Quad City competitors who are having similar employees. And then also just, it's not cheap to live in Prescott, and they can go down to Phoenix and, you know, make $10,000 more, or, yeah, about that. We also, at that level, have to balance raises with class sizes and with programs. If any one of those 3 gets out of whack, we lose students or we lose staff. And we started this proactive budgeting process about 7 years ago, and I think it really has served us well. Mr. Howard, Mr. Tenney, how many, I think in the last, 7 years, teachers have received, or is it 5 years, 37% raises?
Over the last 8 years.
8 years.
We've received 37, teachers have received 37% raises.
Yeah, and our classified staff is, with minimum wage, has varied between 32% raises and some actually right around 40%. And so this is our guiding light. If you haven't read it, please do so. Sarah, did we have copies of this, or is it available?
I can get copies.
We'll get it emailed out, because this is everything. Whenever we have conversations in our district leader team, our district admin team, in a future governing board retreat, if we have it, this is what we refer to with all of our decisions. So students have the best opportunities, class sizes that are manageable, and the best qualified teachers and staff in front of them during their day. When it comes to the budget process, this right here, any questions? It's essentially what I said. So
This is an intro to a series of discussions on the
Yes.
budget that will wrap up hopefully around April.
Yes.
Included in that and in this is that we meet with board members one-on-one and give about a month for you to ask questions about the budget.
Yes.
And we answer all of them.
Yeah. So my work really starts right now. And what I do is I look at what our enrollment is. If we banked on an increase in enrollments during last year's budget process, if we had that increased enrollment, well, we have already spent that increased revenue. We look at class sizes. I do what's called a staffing model, in which we take the number of certified staff members at each site, the number of students. I take like a 19-week average of their enrollments and divvy that up. And ultimately, we look at what could we possibly afford when it comes to raises and things that will increase from one year to the next. Health insurance is our biggest increase. I am expecting and hoping that it's no more than 7%. That will be a $250,000 increase in cost for next year. Arizona State retirement goes up. Minimum wage, I have just started, actually I have delayed crunching numbers because it was over 8%. Well, we have 10 levels of classified, and that 8% increased the minimum wage into our third level. So now all of a sudden we have 3 groups of employees that have 3 different levels for a reason, because of job responsibilities and things like that, that now are making the same. So I will put forward a model that will calculate how much, if we unstretch it, it would cost, and balancing that with those raises. Even minimum wage on our contract services. Our custodial gave us a 75% increase just due to that minimum wage. So we will have all these increased costs. We will have our desired changes for next year's, which may be district initiatives of things that we would like to see. Paraprofessional incentives, that cost money. We will ultimately balance that all with revenue. Unfortunately, with the 8% plus inflation, it is written in our law that we get the the consumer price index inflation rate, or 2%, whichever's the least. So our student value, what we get per pupil, will go up 2% unless the legislators decide to be extremely generous and increase that rate more than they did last June. I don't see that coming. So 2% brings in about $500,000 based on our current enrollment. Well, half of it was just eaten by our health insurance. Then you throw in. So this is the budget process, and what we will do is, here is what the budget package looks like from last year. And I'll just kind of give a preview as what our example is. You're going to have to squint, you'll get this, and I'll just kind of describe what it is. Essentially, what you have is you have 3 columns. The left-hand column shows the fixed, essentially what that says, fixed M&O increase, decrease costs. M&O is our biggest pot of money. It's where salaries, benefits, purchase services come from. Our M&O budget is about $25 million, and we will have increased costs. Like last year, we had our health insurance went up 7%. That cost $244,000. Our minimum wage on our contract services each cost $35,000. We did have a classified placement restructure, which had those costs. So just those fixed costs were $420,000. Then in that column, we talk about decreases to M&O costs, which doesn't happen often. And last year, this fiscal year, we actually had a decrease in our Arizona State retirement contribution. It's not the same for next year. It's going up 0.12%. We also had something called a medical subsidizing sunset. If you have a couple hours, make an appointment with me. We can talk about what that is, but it's sunsetted, so it's not applicable for next year. Then we also have increased estimated revenue, and then also estimated decrease of revenue. That's where you see the 2% inflation got us about $446,000 last year. And we, for the last 7 years with our proactive budgeting process, have always estimated flat enrollments. It's hard to give raises and say we're going to have 500 more kids next year and give a 20% raise and then they don't come. We operate on a model called current year funding. They changed that about 6 years ago. It used to be where the previous year students, ADM, that's annual daily membership, dictated what your budget was the next year. We are making decisions right now based on a student population we don't know, because with current year funding, you set your budget in July. And if you're wrong on your guess on the number of kids, you have to adjust that budget up or down current time. So we have to be very conservative with what we do, because if there's a pandemic and we have 200 less kids, well, we don't have $1.2 million worth of funding because you have to adjust current year. We are in extremely good shape when it comes to where we sit budgetarily, and so we have safeguards for some of these decisions, but I can't even imagine a district that didn't have the carry forward and some of the safeguards with all of a sudden have an exodus from a district. So that left-hand column does the basic things that are being done to us. The middle column is things that we are proposing to happen for the next year, like the raises, which is on top. It cost 5% raise last year for all staff, $1 million. Then underneath there, we had some positions that were initiatives within the district that were new for this fiscal year, which are new costs. Those costs, and so with the raises, includes all the benefits with Arizona State Retirement, Medicaid, and those type of things as well. When it comes down to it, the right-hand side summarizes everything, and you need to have basically a net zero. And we have relied on our carry forward because it has gone up for 7 straight years to offset some of the shortfall of revenue. And that is where our net zero is. In the lower left-hand corner, you'll see that we relied on 1.2 million of our carry forward going into this fiscal year. And we will be analyzing carry forward in this decision going forward for next fiscal year on whether or not our efficiencies in spending has essentially, it has caused us to have a savings over and over the year. That's reoccurring savings on whether or not we're still in that position. We did a energy efficiency measure with the 2015 bond, and it essentially caused the savings over and over again that we could embed in raises. Sooner or later, you plateau with that, and you don't have those savings to rely upon. So that will be part of the discussion is what's our initiatives, what raise, what are our fixed costs that's going up or down, and we need the net to be zero in order to be financially responsible with taxpayer money. So, next slide. That's this year. It's completely blank except for one number.
Brian, how much money do we, at this time of the school year, how much money do we have for the remaining school year? There will be, what is it, a July financial end
It's
of
July
year?
1st to June 30th.
Okay.
So we start, first semester, you can basically say we have spent half of our money for the year.
Okay.
And we started this half now, and we'll spend half.
So where does the COVID money pop in there? Or will we have any of that next year?
COVID, there were 3 pots of COVID money. The second pot of COVID money has to be spent by September 30th of this upcoming year.
Yeah.
We only have a couple $100,000 of that left. The third pot of COVID money, which was our largest pot, which was I think 4.8 million, we have less than 3 million of that left, and that has to be spent by September of 2024. And so part of my job also is to calculate how much, because we do have reoccurring positions that were based out of COVID money that once COVID money went away, those positions went away. And so my job is also to manage that. And that does not figure into anything up here because that's one-time money. Raises and positions are reoccurring money.
Okay.
Good question. Something I want to point out is the budget summary that we all see every week, and Brian's famous for saying,
As presented.
And that's because it's pretty easy to read and for you as board members to see each month kind of what's going on with that. It's probably been 5 or 6 years, and I'm going to recommend that in February, as a board, that he doesn't say as presented, just for that one time, and the board takes a look at that, because 5 or 6 years ago, we said to the board, we've been using something for years and years.
It's horrible.
And we said, is this meeting your purposes for you to kind of stay up with the budget? And we can talk that through, don't you think, Brian, and get recommendations from you all, if that's still relevant to you. It's easy to say as presented if it speaks to you guys and it's easy to read and it gives you good data to feel where we're at each month as a budget summary. So
And-
I just think with new board members, it's a good time for us to say, is this working for you? Can we tweak it? What makes sense, what doesn't, and what are we missing? So I think in February, that'll be just a small piece of this
Yeah.
big picture, but.
And when I get to that agenda item, I'll kind of describe what is there so you can understand it, and then digest it, and next month have a further discussion on it.
Great.
So this is this year, and well, we know our contract custodial service will cost us an additional $75,000. And that's about
Because
all
of
we know.
minimum wage.
Because of minimum wage. Wow. What we do see in the lower left-hand corner is that in 2020, our override did not pass. That gave a 5.1% raise in 2015, 2016 to our all staff members. When that didn't pass in 2020, that million plus revenue decreased a third every year until this year is our last third, and next year we will not have any revenue. So we did say for this year's raises and initiatives that we were going to use 1.2 million worth of our carry forward into this year. The legislators did change some of the funding in June of last year on how much a student is worth, and I calculated exactly what that change would be, and it was 1.2 million. I mean, literally almost to the $28,000 of what we did say we were going to use of carry forward and that new money, and it canceled out. We are at a point where our carry forward is going down from year to year. It is fiscally responsible to have about an 8% carry forward. We're higher than that. So we want to get to a point where that is, where we're not leaving money on the table, but we have enough of a safeguard. And so this year, we will look at that carry forward, and it may or may not be that we recommend using some of it like we have in the last 6 years. But that's what that lower bottom is people ask what happened to that legislative increase of money. Essentially funded the decrease of override money that we will no longer have next year.
So 2 comments. That carry forward is an important balance, and we've done a good job with it over the years, and we've tapped into it a little further and a little further, and we're probably done with that right now. So, but just something for the board to think about. 8% for us is about $1.2 million, right?
No, 1.8.
8%?
8% or right around, with our new cap, it's about
So we
2
want to
million.
be close to that. We can be a little under, we can be a little over. In my opinion, if we're carrying forward a lot more than that, that's money that should have gone to those kids and those teachers that year.
Yeah.
So it's a tight balance. The other thing I want to just be very clear on, and I think Brian was, but I just want to say it again because this is a public meeting. The override money, that went away. Part of our budget was that we absorbed that, and we are paying the teacher. We are not taking that away from teachers. We are continuing to pay that to teachers. And we had to take that out of our budget because the voters said no to that. So that was essentially a cut, but we supplemented it. So I'll just say, we might have to be a little more creative this year to make sure we give raises, and what we say in proactive raises or proactive budgeting is we should, if we want to keep retaining and recruiting the way we are, we need to keep giving raises even if we have to make some cuts.
I agree.
So.
Can I just piggyback really quick? Brian asked me a question earlier about the percent for raises over the last several years, over the last 7. It's been 36 point something percent, rounded up to 37. At any rate, about 36% over the last 7 years, which is terrific. The previous 8 years was 3% total. So this proactive budgeting that we're doing, the board, I was here too. Yep, there were several of us who were in the classroom for that, and it was tough. We were in a different time when, tons of people wanted to be in teaching, tons of people wanted to be here, but if we ever went back to that, it would be disaster. So this proactive budgeting that we've been doing for the last several years has been golden. It's terrific that the district admin team came up with this and the board latched onto it right away and said, that's great, let's do that. It has allowed us to continue to compensate people in a way that keeps us staffed better than any other district I know.
Brian, are you advised if, your current year funding and you guess well, and then your ADM dips, and then you go into the next current year funding, are you advised to keep a certain percentage? What is that about? Just so that if you take a dramatic dip on your
Take
ADM.
a dramatic dip and cut into the carry forward, or
Correct. Well, no, that you have a carry forward to carry it, that to dip into. What would that be?
What
Are you advised of that percentage?
For the percentage is 4 to 8%.
It is 48.
4 to 8%.
That's a lot.
And just to give an example, when we had the pandemic, it was 200 kids less. And when I say students, I'm not talking head count. Once again, make an appointment with me, and I can tell you what ADM means. It's essentially a kid who's here from the first day to the 100th day. All 100 days, we get a full ADM. Kid comes on the 101st day, we don't get any money for that child for that
Wait,
year.
no, I don't have to make an appointment.
Well, I have lots more to say about that. So in that year, we received $1.2 million less of funding because that enrollment dip. Now, we did have the enrollment stability grant, which did provide that. But had that not been there, or another district, anything happens and you have a swing, you're making mid-year cuts, and it's very difficult. So it's really a balance. And like Mr. Howard said, you have that carry forward be too large, you have that criticism. And here's the thing is ours jumped up really to where it is right now, actually because of our shutdown. There were specific things that didn't get paid when it comes to energy and savings. I mean, you're not in school, you're not paying a lot of those things. And so ours were right around 2.2 million after being, I think in 2015, our carry forward was only $100,000. And that's that 2008 to, I don't even know how you operate like that. And then it jumped to 3.6 in 1 year, and that was shutdown year. So anyway, we are where we're at. But I can't believe how healthy we are when it comes to our M&O and our capital monies.
Does the sale of the schools, does that fall into capital or M&O, or where are we on that?
When it comes to the sale of the schools, that's in a school plant property fund. Okay. It can only be spent on capital stuff with life more than 1 year and or construction, and we have about 2.2 million of that left.
Okay, thank you.
That's been essential, especially in the 15 years that we did not receive $1 million per year for capital or DAA monies when that was frozen until just 2 years ago.
And when you look at that as presented budget thing, every single one of those is a different fund. I mean, I don't know how you operate when you have 42 different funds that you have to work out of, and every single one of them have different stipulations on how you can spend. But our main two pots of money, which is enrollment driven, is our M&O, salaries, benefits, services, and our DA, which is capital stuff.
I just wanted to add, when Sarah sends out that first sheet, it really is the philosophy of how we create our budget. And in bold, you'll see it's a balance of salaries, classroom size, and programs. And so if we say we want to give salary increases, we have to look at how does that affect class size and programs, or vice versa. So this is our guiding principle. So as we start to look at things, and we keep a list all year, our wish list.
I hate that list. Every time something goes on, it means more money is going to be spent.
And then we start to look at reality and see what we can't have. But
And PUSD does one step even further than any district that I actually know, because ultimately you will adopt the budgets, the official budget in July. Well, contracts were given well before, and the earlier contracts are given, the better, because then we can post, and we can get the cream of the crop of people moving here. In March, actually, it's our budget package, will come to you for a vote of approval. It has nothing to do with Arizona Department of School Finance rules and laws. It's a philosophical, we are agreeing with what you have worked for 3 months on and saying, yes, this is what we're going to do for the next year. And how soon do contracts go out? After that vote?
Right after, yeah, the next morning.
The next morning. Contracts are given to teachers.
So I want to reiterate that point. The reason we get way ahead of all that is so we can get our contracts out as soon as possible and retain our staff and know who's leaving, and then start to get the very best who are out there.
We've had years in the
Try
past.
to do it earlier and earlier every year. It's a competitive.
Absolutely. I mean, there's been years where, unfortunately, because of legislative decisions, which we kind of, well, and the thing is where we were before without these safeguards, we had to wait till the legislative decision because we didn't have those things to rely on. We had to wait till the legislation convened or whatever, and we couldn't give, I think one time we gave contracts out in July. And we were hiring in July.
That wasn't we.
No.
That was.
So we've seen
15 years ago.
a huge
Yeah.
increase.
No, that wasn't we. That was,
Right.
yeah.
And we have really good teacher retention right now. We have a good opportunity to get new teachers in at a good pay rate. So we've done a good job with this. This is a really positive approach, and I think it's these times coming up when we get to meet with Brian and the team are very useful for us, so appreciate it.
I have it marked on my
You
calendar.
will, as a board, see the budget over and over again, and much more than typical for boards. Because then when we get into June and July, that's when the state requires that you do certain steps and that kind of thing. By that point, you'll know it pretty darn well.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh, we're just reapproving this again.
And to be really honest, the adopted budget that really on the annual financial report that you guys do accept with a vote, you look at it and it's just hieroglyphics. I mean, really, this is our guiding light. This is what's meaningful. And what we adopt is meaningful in my world.
Okay. Thank you.
You are quite welcome.
All right, our final discussion item is liaison plans. And this is a continuation of what was set up by our former board president, Ms. Deb Dillon. And we would like to continue this. I think it's great for us to be out in the schools as we can, as is available to us. So I'd like to open it up right now for a discussion about which schools you would like to be your primary liaison schools. Maybe one, maybe two, depending on what your availability is and what your interest is. I would encourage us all to go out to schools as often as possible. I would encourage that we let Joe know we're doing that. But the primary schools that we have, maybe we talk to the teachers, we converse with them by email once a month, see how things are going and report back and let us know what they're saying to you, is kind of how I see this happening. It doesn't have to be once a month. It can be as often as you can get there. But I see that as a way for us to build goodwill with our staff in the schools and with our students out there.
Can I take Lake Elementary, please?
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest?
For both of you.
I know there are some natural fits, with children in schools and things. So I'd say, Mrs. Woods and Mrs. Kahn, do you have a preference on where you'd like
I'll
to?
take what's ever left over.
I always like Mile High, so.
Yeah,
She's
okay.
a Badger pup.
I'm still going out with Joe.
We're just getting started.
So we tried to make it work, but we only got one school. And so I'll take as many as that's left over that you guys don't want, because I'm retired. So I don't have a job, so I'm available.
I think,
I won't answer for you, but I was thinking you'd prefer an elementary just because that's where you had all your
I
experience.
would, but yeah, that or,
See how it goes, see where
yeah,
it goes. Is that-
middle school. I'd like to see, I think,
Maybe
I'd like
Granite.
to see what's going on in the middle schools.
well, I think as an initial, you know, what comes up with the ones that have suggested where they want to be is Stan at Lincoln, Cara at Mile High, Taylor Hicks, and Abaya Judd. And there we've got the middle schools finished. If you'd like to also get involved with Granite Mountain School, that would be
Sure.
fantastic.
Sure. So tell me where I'm going?
Taylor Hicks, Granite Mountain.
Okay,
Hey, Linda, we'll go visit those next, okay?
sounds good.
And then you're on
And
your
then-
own.
I'll send you an email and
Yeah.
we'll match our schedules.
I look forward to it.
Maybe all of us could try and go to the high school?
Yeah, I think the high school is a great place for all of us to keep visiting and checking in and seeing how things are going. I go up there once a week just for other volunteer activities that I take part in. But I think getting a broad view of everything that's going on is really important.
Big picture.
But I'm happy to work with Adam as the designated liaison, but that doesn't mean any of us can't go to any school, you know.
Oh, okay, okay.
And then I think also, I wouldn't mind working with Stacy in Discovery Gardens as well.
Very cool.
Unless anybody
Pretty
really,
fun.
Jane, are you really interested?
Well, I'd be,
Okay,
I'd love to jump onto Discovery Garden.
okay, let's put you with the Abaya Judd and
Those kids
Discovery
are
Gardens.
interested. I can do both.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, perfect.
I love being over there. It's my niche.
And I'll work with the Service Center and Special Ed as well, just to kind of be a liaison out with those agencies also.
How about our JTED? Anything?
Yes.
I'd like to go there too.
CTED, I'm sorry.
CTED. And
Dave's
here.
Oh, he is still here.
we would like to, and maybe Dave, we can talk, let's set something up where we can have some connections with you. I think that would be really good to see what's going on.
Yeah.
Because there's some amazing things that I think they're.
For those who don't know, Dave Clever is Prescott's representative on the CTED board. So he's a school board member like all of you for CTED. Thank you, Dave, for doing it.
Dave.
Give him a hand. Thank you.
I also want to just mention that I'm planning, I'd like to meet with the DLT once a month and work on a recognition program. That was similar to what we've done in the past, where we've brought staff in and recognized them here, but maybe this will be a little more specific and focused and at sites where the board president and maybe the liaison rep can go out and recognize people at sites.
Do
in
we,
a special way.
like, have a staff meeting? Can we attend the staff meetings and things that way?
I would
We wouldn't
suggest-
be interrupting the classrooms.
Yeah, there are certainly site council
Yeah.
visits. Talk to the principals,
Yeah.
and they will let you know.
Okay.
And let the superintendent know too, just so
And I
they're
think
aware.
principals would, if you chat with them and say, hey, I just want to come say hi to your staff at a staff meeting, they'll welcome you right in
So
and
you're okay with us
introduce you.
initiating our contact with
I
the
think you do
principal?
that with your liaison school.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
The other ones, when you go visit, you
Yeah.
just give good adequate notice
Yeah.
to the principal and pop in and say hello and, yep.
So I have written down Jane Robertson with Abaya Judd and Discovery Gardens, Linda Kahn, Taylor Hicks and Granite Mountain School, Cara Woods with Mile High, Stan Golgoski with Lincoln, and I'll be the PHS contact, but we'll all visit Prescott High School if we can.
And CTED.
And we will I'll work with Mr. Clever and set up a CTED arrangement for us.
So if you guys think this is a good idea, if we're going to have a special meeting or a retreat for superintendent succession, I think we could also maybe just have at least an item to talk a little bit more about recognition ideas. And I like the idea that liaisons might drive that a little bit more and maybe bring it into the schools or whatever. And maybe, Andy, we could have you come talk to the district leadership team and ask them what they think would would be the bang for the buck.
Right.
They think would be good with that.
Right.
And then also we'll put some budget, we'll bring next steps of the budget process into that too.
Okay,
Yeah.
on that special meeting day.
Yeah.
Okay,
But I think we'll put a huge chunk of time for succession planning.
okay. Great. And hopefully that can happen quickly.
I think.
Not tomorrow.
We'll shoot for the soonest possible date.
Okay. Okay.
Not tonight.
Yeah. All right, next item, Mr. Moore, the Chief Financial Officer, the school board summary budget report.
Due to the fact it's at 7:53 and past my bedtime, I will say as presented, but look at it, bring your questions, and I'll go into more depth next month.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any community comments shared with the governing board? Anything you'd like to share?
I've had a couple comments about the social studies curriculum, not appreciating it a whole bunch. Are we gonna, do we have a time set, like, for comments next meeting for the people to come in and comment on that?
Kelsey
I can.
will
I
get
can
us.
finish.
Oh, go ahead.
It'll come to the board next month for
Right, next
approval.
month.
And yes, there's a 60-day process for review, and there's a full-on. Beyond that, people are having no problem emailing board members, as I've seen, or us. So, lots of input on that. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 60-day process has a comment piece built in.
Okay, and are we gonna get those comments that have been sent in before the meeting, or are we just gonna get them at the meeting?
I'll let Kelsey answer that. Yes.
Yes, you will. So the 60-day period closes next Friday, the 20th. And then I will compile all of those and I will get that to you guys beforehand, so you have that in advance.
Okay.
Just like the ELA one, you'll see every comment from the 60-day review.
Yes.
Okay, and I wanted to, this isn't really what the people say, but I would like to have a presentation on the midterm testing, the results.
Are you talking about Galileo?
Yeah,
Okay.
from the beginning to the midterm. Can we just get an update on the results?
Yep. And I'll talk to Andy when we put the next agenda together, and we'll put that on our list.
And we'll need to talk to Renee about when that midterm testing ends.
Yep.
I just had one or two comments over the breaks. Saw many parents and alumni that came back. The biggest thing that stood out was the parents that told me how much they appreciated what their kids got out of PUSD, out of their education. And these are from parents who have a medical resident at Duke University. They have a student studying in his PhD program at the University of Oregon in educational psychology. Another who just got her PhD from the University of Washington in chemical engineering. And, you know, just I think the fact that these stories are out there, and the thing I mentioned was there's got to be some way we can capture all this. And I'm going to keep that on the top of my mind is how can we capture this great information from, it's not just the recent graduates either. This is years and years that this has been happening, and I would really love to see us find a way to do that.
Can we put a memories or something on our website, you know, where we could put little stories that people send in, you know,
And-
encourage the old students to send in something?
Or
picture,
actually have some sort of way to
what
gather
you're doing.
data about what they're doing, where they've been, what types of things they've accomplished throughout their careers, and those are things I'd love to see us develop somehow.
Yeah, there's probably a huge alumni piece that we have not found a way to tap into yet. They could support us in so many ways, and especially sharing stories.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to see that. Any other community comments?
I recently received an email, and this is personal community comment, but the student council at PHS asked how to reach out to to Mrs. Hicks because there was a considerable amount of money that's been given to the student council. And the student council reached out specifically to find out how to get a hold of Mrs. Hicks, and they've invited the whole family to the next pep rally to recognize them. So we will be there in full force. All right, very neat.
I want to say February or January 19th.
I got the 20th, yeah.
20th.
20th, yeah.
9 o'clock in the morning.
9, yeah. Okay.
Be fun, board members.
Yeah.
Come on down.
Yeah. Okay, our next regular meeting dates, our next meeting date is February 7th at 5 o'clock here in the boardroom. But we will try to have a special meeting prior to that to discuss these super important succession issues and other things that are going on. Martin Luther King Day is observed Monday, January 16th, so that's this coming Monday, and all schools are closed. If there's no further business, I want to thank our student reps for being here and for giving a good report again. We really appreciate that. Thank you. If there's no further business, then we're adjourned.